Chapter 2933. Rangi Yuishinlin said. Alright, the two of you are in the same group. Why do you have to hurt your friendship over such a small matter? So what if she stepped on you? It's not like you'll lose anything. Wang Xianjun, please be magnanimous, and don't lower yourself to her level. Wang Xianjuan's face was pale from the pain, but he was still rubbing his foot. She stepped on me too hard. No wonder people say that a woman's heart is the most vicious. He felt that the back of his foot was about to break. Rangi Yuishinlin looked at his foot from a few teams away. His foot was quickly swollen like a bun, and even his boots were full. Rangi Yuishinlin nodded in agreement. Indeed, she was too cruel. It seems that she really didn't give you any face. Ji Shenyue was speechless. This guy was talking about her in a roundabout way. Wang Xianjun saw that this mighty deity was speaking up for him, and felt that he was right. He glared at Yu Xueshang angrily. Yu Xueshang was really wrong this time. She argued angrily again. I didn't step on you. Wang Xianjun hadn't gotten any benefits yet, so he couldn't really fall out with her. He snorted and didn't say anything. Rangi Yuishinlin said again. Alright, you are the first group to come out. You should try your luck first. Which one of you will go first? Yu Xueshang took a deep breath and said coldly. Let him go first as compensation. She still couldn't figure out the level of the divine sword, and needed someone to test the waters first. Anyway, Wang Xianjun was a little naive. Even if he really got the divine sword, she had ways to snatch it from him. She was happy to do this favor. Wang Xianjun wasn't really naive. He also had his own plans. Regardless of Yu Xueshang's character, her appearance and martial arts were indeed the best among this group of girls. If she went first, the divine sword might really choose her. Then, everyone wouldn't even have a chance to try. This was also good. At least he had a chance. He snorted and didn't say anything. He strode forward. Everyone opened their eyes wide, wanting to see what kind of power the divine sword would unleash. After a while, Wang Xianjun limped up from the ground. He didn't feel good from the fall. He originally thought that even if he couldn't obtain the divine sword, touching the sword hilt would be good enough. However, he didn't expect that, not to mention touching the sword hilt. He didn't even have the luck to get close to it. He had just taken 3 or 4 steps in the direction of the divine sword when he stopped, as if he had encountered a great resistance. First, he was choked until his face turned red, and then he flew out like a marionette. He slammed directly onto a large rock. If it wasn't for his thick skin and thick flesh, he probably would have fainted from the fall. He crawled up from the ground with great difficulty, and the divine sword chi he sensed in his heart suddenly broke. Before he could say anything, a large hole opened up under his feet. With a scream, he fell into it and disappeared without a trace. Everyone was shocked. Fortunately, the villa master of the sword-hidden villa explained to them in time. This is a sign that he has been eliminated. Don't worry, he was only invited down the mountain. There won't be any accidents. Only then did everyone heave a sigh of relief. They increasingly felt that this hidden sword villa was not ordinary magical. Fairy Yu, it's your turn. A swordsmith who was in charge of this matter from afar reminded her calmly. Yu Xueshang's face turned pale, but she smiled faintly. I'm afraid that after I make my move, the others won't have a chance. As the saying goes, if it's yours, it won't run away. I can let a few more people go. It won't be too late to make my move after the 4th team makes their move. Chapter 2934. The others did not say anything, but Ji Shenyu sneered secretly. This Yu Xueshang was not an ordinary schemer. She probably wanted to see how many ways the divine sword could attack people. So she let others take the lead, so that she could observe more. Moreover, most of the people in the later groups were not as good as her. She probably thought that the probability of these people being rejected by the divine sword was very high, so she was not too worried that the divine sword would be taken away by the first few groups. Even if someone was lucky enough to catch the eye of the divine sword, as long as their martial arts were not as good as hers, she would probably do everything possible to snatch the sword back from them. In her mind, the strongest opponent was probably Ji Shenyu's group. After all, this group was a strong team, and they were here to fight for the sword for Princess Ji Shenyu. If the divine sword was taken away by these two people, she would have no chance at all. Therefore, she placed herself in front of Ji Xinyu's group to ensure that nothing would go wrong. This woman was able to climb from the lowest level to her current position. She was indeed very scheming everywhere. Ji Xinyu actually did not dislike scheming people. After all, everyone had lived for so many years, and it was impossible for them to become more and more naive. However, she disliked people who frequently stepped on others to get to the top, who had no moral bottom line, and who pretended to be aloof and refined. This Yu Shuashang happened to be in this group. She found her particularly unpleasant to the eye. At this moment, this unpleasant person was standing in front of her. Yu Shuashang stood in front of Ji Xinyu and nodded slightly at her. This was the first time Ji Xinyu was so close to her, and she smelled a very faint orchid fragrance on her body. At first, this fragrance did not feel anything, but after smelling it for a while, she seemed to be getting used to it. She even felt that this was the best and noblest smell in the world, and she wanted to smell it again. Rongyu Ishinlin suddenly pulled Ji Xinyu behind him. Ji Xinyu was not prepared and staggered, almost falling onto his back. She quickly straightened her body and glared at the back of Rongyu Ishinlin, who was half a head taller than her, and had the urge to send him flying with a slap. What was wrong with this guy? Did he think that Yu Shuashang smelled good and wanted to monopolize her? So he pulled her, who was an eyesore, behind him? Ji Xinyu felt that he was being too unkind. Just as she was about to take a step forward, he waved his sleeve at her without even looking back. Ji Xinyu's nose was instantly filled with the faint fragrance of plum blossoms, and she suddenly woke up from her dazed state. Rongyu Ishinlin's voice also entered her ears at the right time. The fragrance on her body is strange. Stay at the back and don't come over. Ji Xinyu was startled, and only then did she realize that her emotions just now were not normal. She was actually almost mesmerized by Yu Shuashang's fragrance, and wanted to run around her. Just now, she even found her extremely pleasing to the eye. Looking at her cold and aloof appearance, she wanted to hug her. Yu Shuashang's body. Could it be some kind of special knockout incense? Even she, a woman, was almost mesmerized by her. If those men smelled her scent, it would be even more difficult for them to control themselves. Could it be that her ability to attract bees and butterflies wasn't something she was born with, but rather something she used in her later years? Yu Shuashang did indeed have a very special knockout incense on her body. It smelled like the fragrance of orchids, and gave off the smell of an elegant fairy. However, this knockout incense could stimulate one's nerves. The more one smelled it, the more one wanted to smell it. The more one smelled it, the more one would be mesmerized. Especially for men, it had a special aphrodisiac effect. Of course, it was not an aphrodisiac effect, but an increase in favorability. Chapter 2935. This was also the main reason why she could become a heartthrob in such a cold and aloof situation. The smell on Yu Shuashang's body was very secretive. Only those who were close to her would be charmed by her. At first glance, it was not much different from an ordinary cold fragrance, so it was easy for people to overlook it. Rongyue Tianlan was a famous pharmacist, so naturally, he was also an expert in perfuming. He was originally standing behind Ji Xinyue, so he should not have smelled Yu Shuashang's scent, but his nose was sharp. After smelling it for a while, he realized that something was wrong, so he immediately pulled Ji Xinyue behind him, and stood where Ji Xinyue was just now. At this moment, looking at the graceful woman in front of him, his lips curled into a mocking smile. Using fragrance to charm people? A sparkling pink powder appeared on his fingertips, and then he flicked it lightly. The pink powder was as light as air, and it stained Yu Shuashang's clothes. Then, he took a step back and stood side by side with Ji Xinyue. Ji Xinyue glanced at him. What are you up to? I'm not up to anything. I don't have any other problems. I just like to pull the fox's tail. Rongyue Tianlan rubbed his chin and chuckled. The two of them were talking in a secret language, so no one else could hear them. Ji Xinyue was puzzled, so Rongyue Tianlan leaned on her. Just wait for the show. Ji Xinyue stepped aside, and her body flashed like a ghost, causing Rongyue Tianlan to lean on nothing. He steadied himself, looked at Ji Xinyue and sighed. Xinyue, you're so heartless. This sentence was full of bitterness, coming from this great god's mouth. It made Ji Xinyue shiver. Great immortal, will you die if you don't feel mushy? She quickly took 2 steps to the side, so as to avoid being stuck to by him again. Rongyue Tianlan smiled, but did not stick to her again. He was an expert in love, so he knew that he could not stick too close to the woman he loved, so as not to scare her away or arouse her disgust. It was better for him to take it slow. Ji Xinyue quickly understood what Rongyue Tianlan meant by pulling the fox's tail. Because of the man and woman who were originally very close to Yu Xueshang. The man suddenly covered his nose and frowned. What's that smell? Then he looked at the woman beside him suspiciously. What's that strange smell on you? Why is it so smelly? The woman was immediately furious. Nonsense. I don't stink. She also wrinkled her nose, and suddenly turned around to look at Yu Xueshang behind her. It's your smell. She suddenly took a step back. What a strong body odor. The man seemed to have figured out the source of the stench. He immediately pulled the woman beside him, and retreated a few steps. It stinks. They stayed far away from Yu Xueshang. Yu Xueshang's expression changed. Well, what's the smell? Body odor. You have body odor. The woman's face was filled with disgust. The man beside her didn't want to talk about other people's shortcomings. He pulled the woman forward and said, Okay, it's our turn. At this moment, Yu Xueshang also smelled the scent on her body, and her face changed greatly. She used to have body odor, but after training, she had obtained a bottle of strange fragrance from an expert in perfumery. She could transform the body odor into a special fragrance that attracted men. However, she did not expect that the strange fragrance would suddenly lose its effect at this moment. Moreover, it caused the body odor on her body to spread out 10 times stronger. Seeing that the remaining few people had disgusted looks on their faces and avoided her, Yu Xueshang wanted to find a hole to hide in. She deeply felt that this place was probably not suitable for her, and her secret was being exposed again and again. Chapter 2936. She deeply felt that this place was probably not compatible with her. Her secret was being exposed again and again. She had embarrassed herself all the way to her grandmother's house. This made her embarrassed and angry, but she couldn't do anything about it. Ji Xinyue couldn't help but glance at Rongyue Shenlin. This person's methods were not ordinary when it came to scheming against others. This time, this fairy's reputation would probably really spread far and wide. The 2 teams in front finally finished their experiments. Just as Yu Xueshang had expected, they all returned in defeat. Basically, before they could even get close to the divine sword, they were bounced off by the sword chi. It was strange, they had clearly failed, but there was no cave to send them away. Instead, they were still standing there, just that they had lost their qualifications. The villa master of the Hidden Sword Manor stood in the distance and explained to these people. The divine sword is more casual. If it doesn't like anyone, it will still throw them down the mountain after they fail. The fact that everyone can still stay here in one piece proves that the divine sword has a good impression of you. Ji Xinyue looked at the divine sword that didn't even move, and couldn't help but shake her head. It was really a divine sword that liked to do as it pleased. However, it did have the right to be arrogant. Although those people failed, they were still very happy that they weren't sent away. They stood in another direction, and looked at the people who hadn't tried yet. Everyone was curious about who the divine sword would choose. Seeing that only Yu Xueshang, Ji Xinyue and Rongyue Shenlin were left, everyone's eyes widened, waiting for the final result. Rongyue Shenlin waved her fan and asked, Fairy Yu, do you still want to give in this time? Naturally, Yu Xueshang didn't want to give in. She had already seen through the divine sword's methods, and had an idea in her heart. At most, she would be bounced off by the divine sword. It wasn't worth much. She had paid a huge price this time, and her desire to obtain the divine sword was even stronger. After she obtained the divine sword, she would use it to kill all those who humiliated her today. She would let these common people tremble under her skirt, and let them know her power. Only by obtaining the divine sword could she get rid of the humiliation today. She took a light breath and walked towards the divine sword. She thought to herself, Divine sword, divine sword. If you acknowledge me as your master, I will definitely make you famous in the world in my hands. You will become the #1 sword in the world. I will give you whatever you want. She knew that the divine sword should be able to read her thoughts, so she desperately made a wish. She walked step by step towards the divine sword, walking cautiously and carefully. She had even forgotten her usual cold demeanor. Strangely, she didn't encounter any obstruction. She could even feel the calling of the divine sword, as if it was calling out to her. When she was only 14 or 15 steps away from the divine sword, she was still able to walk with ease. This was the closest distance that the people in front of him had walked. The most powerful one had been sent flying from this position. As for the others, they were sent flying before they even reached this distance. She did not encounter any obstacles. She walked very smoothly. Yu Xueshang's heart trembled with excitement, and her eyes lit up. Once again, he straightened his chest and looked around at everyone. His eyes were filled with pride. Then he strode forward. The divine sword did not obstruct her at all, so it definitely wanted to recognize her as its master. This time, he could truly hold his head high. When everyone saw this scene, they were also stunned. Who would have thought that the divine sword would choose her as its master? The divine sword was indeed a person with no moral principles. He only looked at whether a person was beautiful or not, whether their martial arts were high or not, and did not care whether their character was good or not. Chapter 2937. Disappointment flashed across the crowd's eyes. A hand was placed on Ji Xinyue's shoulder. Rongyue Tianlan had approached her unknowingly. Are you disappointed? Ji Xinyue shook her head. As expected, she had already guessed it when Yu Xueshang took the 10th step. The others began to encounter obstacles when they took the 10th step. Only Yu Xueshang did not encounter any obstacles. Did this mean that the divine sword had a special liking for her? Of course she was disappointed, but Ji Xinyue was not very surprised. No matter how divine the divine sword was, it was still an artifact. It could not be expected to conform to human standards of good and evil. If the sword was taken away by Yu Xueshang, she could only think of other ways to break the meteorite chain. Yu Xueshang finally reached out to the divine sword. Just as her snow-white fingertips were about to touch the hilt of the divine sword, a sudden change happened in an instant. A snow-white cold light burst out from the sword. The cold light was extremely bright and dazzling. Yu Xueshang was caught off guard and blinked subconsciously. Then, she felt a sudden pain in her right arm. Blood spurted out, and a snow-white mass flew out. This change was too fast, so fast that she did not even have time to scream. She subconsciously took a step back. Only then did she see that the snow-white mass that flew out was her arm wrapped in her sleeve. Her right arm had been cut off from the shoulder. It was not until blood spurted out from the cut that Yu Xueshang finally reacted. She let out a shrill cry and finally felt pain. She had probably never experienced such pain in her life. She took a few steps back and sealed her acupoints with trembling hands. Before her fingers touched her shoulder, another white light burst out and flashed past her left shoulder. As a result, her left arm also flew out with a spray of blood. She screamed and lost her balance. Her body fell backward. A big hole appeared in the ground. Her whole body fell into it. With a scream, she fell straight down and disappeared in an instant. The ground closed and the big hole disappeared. Even Yu Xueshang's 2 broken arms disappeared without a trace. It was unknown whether they fell with Yu Xueshang, or fell to another exit at the foot of the mountain. Even the blood on the snowy ground disappeared after a flash of white light. It was as if this tragedy had never happened. Almost everyone was stunned. Everyone stared blankly at this scene, unable to close their gaping mouths. It turned out that the godly sword did not only have the ability to send people flying, it could actually cut off people's arms without being unsheathed. What's more, he didn't expect it to be so ruthless towards the #1 beauty. First, he gave her hope. He didn't reject her approach, but when she was full of hope, he gave her the most fatal blow. After Yu Xueshang fell down, even if she didn't bleed to death, she would become a real cripple. Her tragic end was already destined. Not only was this divine sword ruthless, it was also two-faced. Ji Shenyu looked at the sword lying there. her fingers slowly clenching. Now that only she and Rongyue Tianlan were left, she was bound to make this trip. She could no longer sense the aura of the divine sword. It was obvious that it had given up on her, and would not recognize her as its master. It seemed that the master it recognized was Rongyue Tian. Or perhaps only Rongyue Tian could truly subdue it. Rongyue Tian's gaze also fell on the sword. Her expression was rarely solemn. Suddenly, she took her hand and walked forward. I'll go with you. Chapter 2938. Shenyu paused. Aren't we going one by one? Rongyue Tianlan smiled. I'm not against the two of us going together. You go and pull out the sword first. If you can't do it, I'll do it. Pulling her forward, he said. All right, it's a happy deal. Don't dawdle. The surrounding onlookers widened their eyes. Everyone could tell that heavenly immortal Rongyue's attitude towards heavenly Lord Shun Yu was rather ambiguous. This was because men rarely held hands. Sir God Shun Yu seemed to be unwilling, and he looked like he wanted to kick the other party away, but he couldn't be too rude in front of so many people. Everyone had heard about Rongyu and knew about the grudge between him and Ji Xinyue. Now that they saw this, they could not help but guess. Could it be that this heavenly immortal Rongyu was a homosexual, and he liked this heavenly Lord Xinyu? Was that why he broke off the engagement with Princess Ji Xinyu with such fanfare? After breaking off the engagement, the two of them might have felt sorry for Princess Ji Xinyue. So they came here to snatch the divine sword, and wanted to give it to Princess Ji Xinyue as compensation? The more the crowd thought about it, the more they felt that this was the truth. After all, Xinyu was famous for not being interested in women. He had never been seen in any brothel. As for heavenly immortal Rongyu, she immediately broke off her great marriage and came to play with Xinyu. After the crowd guessed this truth, the interaction between the two of them became more and more subtle. It seemed more and more like they were gay. This mainland did not discriminate against gay people. After all, everyone was immortal cultivators. The path to immortality was long and boring. It was not bad to have a companion by your side. Love between a man and a woman was good, but it might even be true love. Moreover, the couple in front of them looked so pleasing to the eye. The crowd had all kinds of guesses. Ji Xinyue naturally did not know that the crowd had already thought of her relationship with Rongyue Tianlan. At this moment, all her thoughts were on the divine sword. She did not want the sword to recognize her as its owner. She wanted to prevent it from attacking her. When she and Rongyue Tianlan walked towards the divine sword, they did not meet with any obstacles. When they were 5 steps away from the divine sword, Rongyue Tianlan stopped and finally let go of Ji Xinyue's hand. You go first. Ji Xinyu nodded and strode over. Until now, she had not sensed the call of the divine sword. This fellow allowed her to come close. Perhaps it also had the intention of slashing her. However, she was not Yu Xueshang. If it wanted to plot against her, it would have to pay a price. She knew she couldn't get the sword, and she didn't want to get it. The only reason why she came here was because she had already come this far. If she left without trying, others might think that she was afraid of the sword. She reached her hand out to the divine sword. Rongyue Ishinlin, who was a few steps away, secretly pinched a spell in her sleeve to prevent the divine sword from harming people. However, he and Ji Xinyu were obviously overthinking things. The sword lay there quietly. When Ji Xinyu's fingers touched the hilt, it still didn't react. What's wrong with this guy? The sword spirit inside was being suppressed. Ji Xinyue didn't notice anything wrong, so she had no choice but to draw her sword. Swoosh! A sword as cold as ice was unsheathed. It went so smoothly that even Ji Xinyu herself was stunned. Of course, the people who were staring at her nervously were also stunned. Everyone's jaws dropped at the same time. Chapter 2939. So straightforward. So smooth. She actually didn't encounter any obstacles, nor did she encounter any attacks. Ji Xinyue pulled out this sword as if it were an ordinary sword, causing her to be nervous for so long for nothing. That feeling was like using all her strength to chop down a large rock, only to find that the rock was a soft piece of tofu. It made her feel like her waist had been shaken. Her gaze fell on the blade, and she narrowed her eyes slightly. The blade was 2 feet and 8 inches long, as if it was made of ice and snow, with a hint of icy blue in the snow white. The blade was sharp, and under the sunlight, it shone with a rainbow luster. It was magnificent, but also exuded a cold, murderous aura. Ji Xinyue had seen many divine weapons in her life, delicate, mysterious, rough, and all kinds of special characteristics. But she had never seen such an aura as contradictory and strange. This sword was very beautiful, unprecedentedly beautiful. Whether it was the blade or the hilt, every inch of it revealed one word: perfection. Ji Xinyue had never thought of using the word beautiful to describe a sword, but the moment she saw the full appearance of this sword, this was the first word that appeared in her mind. Such a beautiful sword, but its aura was extremely powerful, as if it was a proud queen looking down on all living things, not allowing anyone to violate it. Ha ha, are you surprised? A line of words suddenly flashed in Ji Xinyue's mind. At the same time, Ji Xinyue finally felt the sword intent of the divine sword. It was very turbulent and very cheerful. It was as if the sword was laughing proudly. Ji Xinyue, she replied with an ellipsis. You are indeed surprised. I find that you really don't want me? The divine sword wrote another line of words. That's right. Ji Xinyue replied with 2 words. If I knew it. I can read minds. The divine sword wrote proudly. Then why did you choose me? Ji Xinyue expressed her confusion. This divine sword likes challenges, and this divine sword has the final say in who the master of this divine sword is. No one has the right to refuse or interfere. Similarly, since I have chosen you, you have no right to refuse. The divine sword said proudly. It had a look of, I just like to see you not like me, but can't do anything to me. These words were so annoying. Ji Xinyue narrowed her eyes. Is that so? With a flip of her wrist, she was about to throw the divine sword out. Suddenly, she felt a wave of extremely cold air pass through the sword hilt and into her palm. It instantly swam into her blood vessels, causing all the blood vessels in her body to almost freeze. It was her instinct to save herself in danger. So Ji Xinyue immediately channeled her internal energy to resist. She used her telekinesis to intercept the cold air that was flowing towards her. The 2 of them fought and clashed inside her body. It was as if 2 powerful cultivators were fighting inside. Ji Xinyue stood there, seemingly motionless, but her face suddenly turned red and white, and the veins on her hand that was holding the divine sword faintly bulged. Rongyue Tianlan frowned. Her figure flashed, and she was about to step forward to help. However, the secret message from the sword concealment villa stopped him in time. At this moment, Ji Xinyue had no time to pay attention to her surroundings. She was trying her best to push the cold qi out, inch by inch through her blood vessels, forcing it back into her palm. Swoosh! Ji Xinyue finally let out a sigh of relief, as she finally forced out the cold qi. This scoundrel wanted to show her who was the boss, but she was not going to fall for it. However, as the cold qi leaked out, a few drops of blood were also forced out from her palm. Chapter 2940. Strangely enough, the moment the blood was forced out, it did not condense in her palm. Instead, it was eaten by the sword, disappearing without a trace. A line of blood flowed from the hilt into the blade, all the way to the tip. The sword was originally snow white with a hint of light blue, but now there was a dazzling red line, as if a plainclothed beauty had added a crimson belt to her waist. It was shockingly beautiful. It's a success, the divine sword said again. Ji Xinyue's heart tightened. What's a success? Congratulations, Princess Xinyue. The divine sword has recognized you as its master. From today onwards, it's yours. The voice of the hidden sword manor master came from afar, his voice full of gratification. Ji Xinyue froze. Princess Xinyue? Her identity was exposed. She looked down subconsciously and saw herself reflected on the sword blade. She took a deep breath. She did not know when she had regained her original appearance. Although she was still wearing Sir God Xinyue's clothes, her face was her own. Flowing black hair, jade-like skin, watery eyes, captivating red lips. Ji Xinyue's face was extremely beautiful. Once she regained her original appearance, it was obvious that she was a girl. No matter how beautiful a man was, he could not look like her. so it was useless even if she was still wearing men's clothes. She glanced at the people around her. Almost everyone's eyes fell on her face, their expressions varied. Some were surprised, some thought that it was so, and some were jealous. So Sir God Shinyu is Princess Shenyue. Aya, why didn't I think of that? They are the same person. Shinyu, Shenyue, their names are similar. So Princess Shenyue is not so introverted that she can't meet people. She has been wearing men's clothes in the Jianghu, and has made such a name for herself. This is too surprising. If this news spreads, it will cause a sensation in the entire Fanning continent. Everyone's discussion was endless. Obviously, the fact that Sir God Shinyu was Princess Shenyue had shocked them greatly. Ji Shenyue glanced at Rongyu Ishinlin beside her, but his gaze fell on the divine sword in her hand, as if he was thinking of something. At first, Ji Shenyue thought it was Rongyu Ishinlin's doing. After all, he was the only one who could restore her original appearance without anyone noticing. But now, her gaze fell on the divine sword. You're the one behind this. Her tone was somewhat unfriendly. The tip of the divine sword flashed with white light, as if a child's prank had finally succeeded. Not bad. How can my master hide his head and show his tail? I want everyone to understand that I chose a woman, and not a man. And I can't let people say that my divine sword made a choice without seeing the person. Ji Shinyu's finger gently stroked the edge of the sword, a faint smile on her face. How do you know that I must have you? This guy had exposed her true identity without her consent. He was simply too willful. It was fine if she could control such a divine sword well. But if she couldn't control it well, she was afraid that it would backfire on her master. She didn't want it. You're right to be worried. I only follow the strong. The divine sword seemed to have finally opened its chatterbox, and was able to communicate with others. That's why you must continue to become stronger. Continue to become stronger, so that you won't trigger my backlash. Ji Shinyu raised her hand and threw it out. No need, I can abandon you right now. The divine sword turned into a shooting star, and was directly thrown off the mountain peak. Everyone was fighting to get this sword, and when they saw this sword ancestor, they couldn't wait to worship her. Chapter 2941. The princess actually threw it away. Threw it away. It was such a waste of resources. It was too unbelievable. Even the villa master of Hidden Sword Villa changed his expression. Ever since this sword was forged, all sorts of strange phenomena had occurred. It had exploded the sword-casting furnace, and destroyed the sword-forging room. No matter what, it could not be forged into the shape that the swordsmith wanted. Even the length and shape of the blade could not be controlled. In the end, on the day it took shape, it took the lives of all the swordsmiths in the room. On the day it took shape, Sword-casting Peak was automatically covered in ice and snow. No creatures were allowed to come close within a radius of 10 miles. Anyone who came close would be killed without mercy. What was even worse was that this sword was extremely aggressive. Ever since it was formed, the top-quality weapons in the Hidden Sword Villa had suffered a calamity. As long as it smelled the slightest scent, it would automatically come to the door and cut the opponent in half. There were originally hundreds of divine weapons stored in the treasure pavilion of the Hidden Sword Villa. But in the end, they were completely destroyed by it in a single day. When Hidden Sword Mountain's Villa Master found it, he only saw a mess. Hidden Sword Mountain's Villa Master was so heartbroken that he almost vomited blood. When he looked up, he saw this thing hanging in the air arrogantly and writing lines of words on the wall. It's time for this divine sword to choose its master. In the thousands of years since Hidden Sword Villa's establishment, this was the first time they were forced by a sword. It was also the first time a sword set the rules for choosing its master. Before it left, it even took the sword at the Villa Master's waist. It was said that it was a piece of scrap metal, and it was annoyed just looking at it. How was this forging a divine sword? It was simply inviting a living ancestor. Hidden Sword Villa had 365 swordsmiths. All of them were top-notch and were sword fanatics. They were obsessed with forging swords every day. Even if the swords they forged were not divine swords, they were still rare treasures in this world. Because there were many swordsmiths, Hidden Sword Villa had swords formed almost every day. However, Ever since this divine sword was formed, Hidden Sword Villa could no longer forge another sword. This was because every sword would be destroyed by this thing, as soon as it was formed, only leaving a ground of scrap metal for the swordsmiths, causing them to beat their chests and stomp their feet. Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master never thought that a sword could be such a disaster. So in the end, he did whatever it wanted. He only wanted to send this living ancestor away as soon as possible. Those who had passed just now all returned in defeat. The Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master remained calm on the surface, but his heart was still trembling with fear. He was afraid that the divine sword heart was too high, and would not choose a master among these people, continuing to stay in the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa to cause trouble. Therefore, when he saw that the divine sword had recognized Ji Xinyu as its master, he heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that he had finally found a husband for the sword ancestor, and could send it off with a bang. But he never thought that Ji Xinyu would actually not want it. He even threw the sword out in a very dashing manner. To be honest, seeing the divine sword suffer, the Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master actually felt quite relieved. However, he knew very well how crafty this divine sword was. Now that he had been thrown out in public by Ji Xinyu, he would definitely feel embarrassed. Who knew what kind of waves he would stir up? Princess, this sword can't be offended, the Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master hurriedly said. Before he could finish his sentence, a loud rumbling sound came from below. The ground beneath his feet trembled. Heavens! The mountain is going to collapse. The people standing at the edge of the cliff cried out in alarm. Everyone leave quickly! Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master shouted in alarm. Chapter 2942. Everyone leave quickly! Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master shouted in alarm, and took the lead to fly up with the swordsmiths beside him. The earth was rumbling, the mountain rocks were collapsing, and the snow was flying. The mountain peak that everyone was standing on was cut in half by the divine sword, and the entire mountain peak collapsed. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Only the collapse of the mountain peak could be seen, and almost nothing else. One sword. Just one sword. One sword destroyed a mountain peak. This was the power of the divine sword. Fortunately, everyone who was standing on the mountain peak could fly, and rose into the air in time, so they didn't die with the mountain peak. However, this earth-shattering aura frightened everyone present. After the divine sword destroyed the mountain peak, it directly flew up. It hovered in front of everyone and buzzed. The sword's body was dazzling, and the sword's chi covered the entire sky like dark clouds, as if it was enraged and was ready to attack these people. Almost everyone present was an expert among experts, and any one of them was a well-known figure in the Sanine continent. However, under the deterrence of this sword, their faces turned pale. They subconsciously pulled out their weapons, but these weapons that were usually very powerful were now like mice that saw a cat, trembling in the hands of their owners. Some even refused to unsheath, and no matter how their owners urged them, they didn't dare to move. Everyone felt the murderous aura of the sword, and those with weaker skills couldn't help but tremble. They all looked at Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master, wanting to see what the divine sword's creator had in mind. Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master had no choice, and could only look at Ji Xinyu and Rongyi Yuishinlin with hope. Of course, he was mainly looking at Rongyi Yuishinlin. After all, the other party was an exalted immortal, and he was experienced and knowledgeable. Perhaps he would have an idea. Rongyi Yuishinlin, on the other hand, was very carefree and calm. He twirled a bamboo flute in his hand and looked at Ji Xinyu beside him. Do you need me to make a move? Ji Xinyu stared at the sword and shook her head decisively. No need. I can do it myself. She leapt up and flew straight towards the overbearing divine sword. At this time, the sword had become much bigger and longer, and stood there like a huge dragon bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws. Ji Xinyu standing in front of it was like a little white rabbit standing in front of an elephant. Especially after Ji Xinyu flew over, the sword seemed to be even more excited. The light was like a small sun, and the sword chi was even more biting cold. The surrounding clouds were torn apart by the sword chi, and the airflow was like a tsunami. Everything that came close to it was instantly turned into dust. Although everyone knew that Ji Xinyu's martial arts were very high, in this situation, everyone was worried for her. In particular, the villa master of the hidden sword villa clenched his sleeves tightly. He could already tell that this divine sword was truly enraged. It even had the heart to devour its master. If Ji Xinyu was no match for it, she would most likely be injured by it. Once he was injured by it, the newly established blood contract would be automatically dissolved. This sword would become ownerless again. It was so ferocious. After this incident, once such a bad reputation was spread, who would dare to have ideas about it in the future? Then, wouldn't it be unable to find its master and continue to wreak havoc in the sword-hidden villa? With this sword's temperament, if no one subdued it, it might directly become a sword demon and stir up a storm of blood in the Sanskrit continent. When the villa master of Hidden Sword Villa thought of this, his head swelled up. Chapter 2943. When Hidden Sword Villa's villa master thought of this, his head couldn't help but swell. A layer of cold sweat formed on his forehead. He really wanted to remind Rongyi Yuishinlin to pay attention to the divine sword's movements. It would be best if he could directly think of a way to subdue the divine sword. However, he didn't dare to say it out loud. If the divine sword hurt him, his hidden sword villa would probably be razed to the ground. He was so anxious that he couldn't help but look at Rongyi Yuishinlin again and again. This ascendant immortal was truly able to keep his composure, standing there without moving. Ji Xinyu stood in front of the divine sword, her clothes fluttering like the tide. But she was as still as a mountain. She looked up at the sword, her lips moving, as if she was communicating with the sword. But no one could hear what she was saying. Hidden Sword Villa's villa master's heart skipped a beat. The airflow within a radius of half a mile around the sword was extremely strong, and everyone could almost see the surging sword intent. They knew that under such airflow, even a blade made of diamond could be broken and destroyed by this airflow. However, Ji Xinyu, this delicate and timid woman, was standing in front of the divine sword. Other than her clothes fluttering a little, she didn't see anything wrong with her. Her expression was even cold and calm, as if she was standing in an ordinary place. Just from this move, everyone understood that this Princess Ji Xinyu's skills were truly unfathomable. Other than immortal Rongyue, who hadn't made a move yet, no one present could last more than 10 moves in front of her. When those women saw that the divine sword had recognized Ji Xinyu as its master, they were a little unconvinced. They felt that she was only relying on her identity, or perhaps Rongyi Yuishinlin's light, which was why she had such good luck. But now that they saw Ji Xinyu reveal such strength, they had no choice but to be convinced. This princess relied on her own abilities, not to mention the people present. Even Fairy Xuechong couldn't compare to her. No matter when the strong were the easiest to convince. Ji Xinyu hadn't even officially made a move, but she had already won the sincere admiration of everyone. After watching for a moment, Hidden Sword Villa's villa master finally saw that Ji Xinyu was indeed communicating with the divine sword, and was not pretending. His heart skipped a beat, and his eyes widened. After the divine sword was forged, the only person who could barely communicate with it was him, the villa master. No one else could. But now, Ji Xinyu seemed to be chatting happily with it. Could it be because of the blood contract between them? Ji Xinyu was indeed conversing with this divine sword. After this divine sword was thrown out by her, it seemed to be extremely angry. In her mind, the general meaning was that it was a dignified divine sword, and only it could abandon people. No one could be disrespectful to it. Otherwise it would be blasphemy and so on. Ji Xinyu expressed her disdain towards its double standards. After exchanging a few words with it, she was unable to convince it, so she simply pulled out her saber and laughed. Dignity is something you fight for yourself, not something you scare. This princess doesn't like to talk nonsense. Let's fight. If you win, you can do whatever you want to me. If I win. She paused for a moment. The divine sword immediately replied. You win. I officially recognize you as my master. Ji Xinyu sneered. It's not easy to recognize me as your master. You have to get my permission first. I'm not the type to blindly accept things. The divine sword seemed to have suffered a blow. It paused for a moment before asking. Then what will happen if you win? Chapter 2944. Do me a favor. After this, you'll still be free to choose another master. Ji Shenyue stated her conditions. The divine sword's light flickered as it repeated. By then, I'll be able to choose my master? Yes. I won't interfere. Nor will I stop you. Alright, deal. The divine sword buzzed and flew straight up into the sky. Come on. Let me see what you're capable of. It sounded like an elder giving pointers to a younger generation. Ji Shenyue almost laughed. She didn't say anything else and flew up like a bolt of lightning. One sword and one person faced each other in the air. The tip of the sword was pointed at Ji Shenyue, overflowing with murderous intent. Ji Shenyue waved her hand in the air, and two swords appeared out of thin air, one red and one white. There seemed to be a raging fire on the red sword, while there seemed to be ice and snow on the white sword. She had used the fire element and water element in the air to condense them. They might not be divine weapons, but they were sharp enough. Everyone looked up from below, and when they saw Ji Shenyue making these two swords, they were somewhat puzzled. Shenyu's famous weapon was the Azura saber. There was even a saying in the Fanning continent, when Azura appears, ghosts and gods weep. It was obvious how powerful and famous that saber was. This divine sword was obviously not easy to deal with. Even if Ji Shenyue used all her strength, she might not be its opponent. Everyone thought that she would definitely use the saber, but they didn't expect her to casually condense two swords. In the Fanning continent, as long as one cultivated to the level of a god, it was very common for them to casually condense weapons. However, to deal with a divine weapon like the divine sword, shouldn't one use the most suitable weapon? Ji Shenyue had underestimated her opponent too much. The hidden sword Villa's Villa master clenched his fists so tightly that his finger bones almost broke. He couldn't help but complain to Rongyu Ishinlin. Immortal, is Princess Shenyue. Is she underestimating her opponent too much? Rongyu Ishinlin's gaze also fell on Ji Shenyue's two swords, but her eyes flashed with admiration. She's very smart. Hidden sword manor lord. Was this arrogance? The divine sword was also buzzing. It was also angry at being looked down upon. You're not going to pull out your broken blade? It was the ancestor of weapons, so it could easily see all the weapons on Ji Shenyue's body. The only thing that caught his eye on her was the knife. As for the divine sword, it had also disliked that saber for a long time, of course. In the eyes of the divine sword, all the weapons in the world were not up to standard. Saying that it was a lousy blade was already praising the blade. Normally, it would call other weapons scrap metal. Ji Shenyue's Azura blade was actually very afraid of this divine sword. Compared to this divine sword, it was simply unsightly. When the divine sword wanted to recognize Ji Shenyue as its master, the Azura saber felt a sense of danger. He felt that it was over. Its position had been replaced. It was very indignant and full of self-pity. It even felt like it had given up on itself. Ji Shenyue and the divine sword were about to fight, and the Azura saber immediately felt a sense of solemnity. It felt that its master would definitely use it, so its chance to fight for its master had arrived. It wanted to fight. Rather than being abandoned and ignored in the future, it might as well fight for its master now. Even if it was cut into scrap metal by the divine sword and completely destroyed, it was still better than hiding in the storage space and rusting. Now that it had been named, it felt even more solemn and stirring. It desperately used its spiritual force to influence Ji Shenyue in the storage space. Master, use me! Master, let me out! Chapter 2945. Ji Shenyue naturally sensed the Azura saber's excitement. She held the two swords in one hand and patted it with the other. Be good. You don't need to fight now. I can't let anything happen to you. If she pulled out this saber, she would definitely be cut into pieces by this divine sword. This saber had been with her for thousands of years, and had long since developed feelings for it. She did not want to risk it. Furthermore, this battle really did not need it to fight. The Azura saber was moved. Master did not give up on it. Master was still as good to it as before. Master was really too good. She was worth it for it to risk its life for her. But the divine sword was angry. The sword shadow spun and countless swords appeared around it. Countless sword shadows spread out in the sky, filling the sky with killing intent. I will make you pay for underestimating the enemy this time. The sword shadows were like a tide, shooting towards Ji Xinyu's face. This divine sword actually knows the shadow division technique. Heavens, this sword has already become a spirit. The spectators below cried out in surprise. One must know that the shadow division technique could only be used when the weapon's master reached the high level of divine monarch. No matter how powerful a weapon was, it still needed a truly powerful master to use it to unleash its power. And this sword knew such a profound technique by itself. It was truly heaven-defying. Everyone was excited and nervous at the same time, all of them holding their breaths. Ji Xinyu's body swayed, and everyone's eyes blurred. Countless Ji Xinyu appeared in the sky. Every Ji Xinyu faced a divine sword. Shadow division technique against shadow division technique. The divine sword and human figures intertwined in the sky. And from time to time, the sound of beans exploding could be heard. This kind of battle was truly too rare. Everyone was dazzled, but they did not dare to blink, afraid that they would miss something. Ji Xinyu's method of dealing with the divine sword was very simple. Every one of her clones had a red sword in their right hand with raging flames, directly burning the divine sword. After burning for a while, the ice sword in their left hand directly spat out a pillar of water. Her method of fighting was very effective. The divine sword's clones, after alternating between hot and cold attacks, were directly blown away. Originally, the divine sword's clones were exactly the same as its main body. When they were flying, no one could tell which was the clone and which was the main body. But after a quarter of an hour, those divine sword clones had all disappeared, leaving only one sword in the air, unscathed. The swords in Ji Xinyu's hands that were fighting against this sword had already been destroyed. They were directly cut into countless pieces by the sword chi on the sword in a single exchange. However, even though it was cut off quickly, Ji Xinyu was not slow either. Just as the two swords were destroyed, she immediately condensed two identical swords. You can actually see through my true form. The divine sword's voice rang in Ji Xinyu's mind. Ji Xinyu's lips curled up. To her, this was not difficult at all. However, the divine sword's next words caused the smile that had just appeared on Ji Xinyu's face to disappear in an instant. As expected of the master that this divine sword has chosen, this divine sword has discovered that you are a promising talent. Ji Xinyu didn't want to waste any more time with it. With a wave of her hands, countless shadow clones gathered and surrounded the divine sword from all directions. Beat it up. This was Ji Xinyu's short order. Boom boom boom. Hua hua hua. Countless tongues of fire shot towards the divine sword, enveloping the divine sword in a sea of fire. After burning fiercely for a while, waves of water turned around and splashed towards the divine sword that had almost been burned red by the heat like a tidal wave. Everyone finally understood why Ji Xinyu did not use the Azura saber, but used this kind of sword instead. Chapter 2946. No matter how divine the divine sword was, it was still a sword. A sword had the characteristics of metal. If it was a rock, it would have exploded countless times. Even if it was a divine sword, it would still be damaged, right? One sword and one person attacked in the air like a whirlwind. This time, the divine sword did not use the shadow clone technique. It directly attacked. Countless rays of light shot out from its body, shooting towards Ji Xinyu in the air. Those rays of light were too sharp, too fierce. When they shot out, the sharp whistling sound was shocking. Ji Xinyu's shadow clones were hit by the divine sword's rays from time to time, turning into gas and disappearing. Hidden Sword Villa's Villa Master's heart jumped for half a day, afraid that Ji Xinyu's real body would also turn into gas and disappear after being hit. After all, Ji Xinyu's real body and clones were exactly the same. It was impossible to tell them apart with the naked eye. Moreover, the divine sword shot out too many rays of light, like fireworks. Seeing Ji Xinyu's clones explode and disappear in the air, the Villa Master felt his heart tighten and contract. He was so nervous that he couldn't breathe. If her real body was hit, even if she didn't turn into gas and disappear, she would probably be seriously injured, right? If that was the case, the villa master didn't dare to think further. The battle in the air was too fast. The sky was filled with shadows of swords and people. He was a little dizzy, and couldn't see who had the upper hand in the battle. He turned his gaze to Rongyuishenlin. Rongyuishenlin's gaze was also fixed on the sky. Although there was no expression on his face, he still looked very calm, without any worry. Hidden Sword Villa's villa master secretly heaved a sigh of relief. This immortal and Princess Ji Xinyue were one. If she was going to be defeated, he should be very anxious, right? Now that he was so calm, it should be because Princess Ji Xinyue had the upper hand. In fact, after watching for a while, everyone was a little dizzy. Some of the weaker ones even vomited. In the end, no one dared to look at the person and the sword in the battle anymore. Instead, they looked at Rongyuishenlin to analyze who had the upper hand in this battle from his facial expression. Rongyuishenlin, who was watching the battle, suddenly had a faint white light at his waist. He frowned slightly and touched his waist, taking out a silver-white sound transmission talisman. He casually opened it. A moment later, he turned off the voice transmission talisman, turned around, and flew to the side of the Hidden Sword Villa's villa master. Villa master, may I have a word with you? Everyone was quite far away. They only saw Rongyue Tianlan and the Manor Lord of Hidden Sword Manor whispering something. The Manor Lord looked at the battle in the sky reluctantly, and then quickly followed Rongyue Tianlan. The two figures disappeared very quickly, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Everyone left? Exalted immortal Rongyu left just like that? Princess Ji Xinyue was still fighting for her life against that divine sword. Didn't he care a lot about this princess? Why did he choose to leave at this time? One had to know that the battle above was getting more and more dangerous. Almost every moment was extremely dangerous. If he really cared about her, even if he didn't help her, he would at least protect her without blinking, right? Why did he suddenly leave? Could it be that the rumors were true? That this heavenly immortal Rongyu only felt guilty towards Princess Ji Xinyue, and only wanted to help her obtain the divine sword. Once he achieved his goal, he would leave without any reluctance? Regarding Rongyue Tianlan's departure midway, everyone was speculating in their hearts. There were almost 100 melodramatic versions of it. Chapter 2947. Ji Xinyu, who was fighting in the air, also paused for a moment. In this short pause, her arm was hit by a ray of white light from the divine sword. Fortunately, she woke up in an instant and dodged in time. The white light brushed past her arm and cut off a piece of her flesh, but did not hurt her bones. Blood gushed out, but she did not care. She sealed her acupuncture points at lightning speed, focused her mind, and continued to fight with the divine sword. When one person and one sword fought, the momentum was extremely shocking. Fortunately, they were in the air. If they were on the ground, the entire Hidden Sword Manor would have been completely destroyed. This divine sword was indeed a heaven-defying spiritual object. Its spiritual chi was astonishing, but it had just been formed not long ago. It had little experience, and the moves it knew were limited. After fighting with it for 100 moves, Ji Xinyu had basically figured out its moves, and would not be hurt by it again. The only thing that gave her a headache was that this sword was unprecedentedly tough, and especially resistant to beatings. She refined it with fire and water for a long time, and it actually became brighter and sharper. What made Ji Xinyu not know whether to laugh or cry was that this sword was extremely smart, and it could learn and use it. It had actually been observing her swordsmanship. As long as it saw her use it a few times, it would be able to use it properly and turn around to deal with her. It was very proud of itself during the fight. How does it feel to be attacked by your own moves? Ji Xinyu pursed her lips and did not even bother to give it any response. The divine sword could not even detect what she was thinking. Her mentality had always been very stable. No matter what words it used to provoke her, it could not anger her. Instead, it made her attack more and more ruthless. Of course, there was only one time when her emotions wavered, and that was when Rongyue Tianlan left. So much so that it found an opportunity to hurt her. However, because her emotions wavered for too short a time, she quickly adjusted herself. and it could not find another chance. The divine sword was actually very happy. The longer it fought with Ji Xinyu, the more moves it learned. Then, it used all of them on Ji Xinyu, letting her have a taste of the fun of using one's own spear to attack one's own shield. After fighting for nearly 2 hours, Ji Xinyu's forehead was slightly sweaty, but the sword was getting brighter and brighter. After all, a person's physical strength was limited, but the divine sword, it was like a small motor with an electric circuit, and did not know fatigue at all. You are no match for me. I am the only divine weapon in the world, but for you to be able to resist me for so long, that's already pretty good. If you admit defeat, I won't do anything to you. The longer we fight, the more moves I'll learn from you. You won't be able to deal with me then. Why don't you stop while you're ahead? Hey, why aren't you saying anything? Have you turned mute from fighting? This sword repeatedly flashed through Ji Xinyue's mind. Ji Xinyue finally spoke. If I admit defeat, what will you do to me? The little girl finally couldn't hold on any longer. Admit defeat? The divine sword immediately said proudly. If you lose, you can recognize me as your master, and I will still help you with whatever you need. Ji Xinyu smiled. That sounds pretty good. Of course, my divine sword cherishes talents very much. However, there is one thing that I want to make clear. My servants are not allowed to carry other weapons. Throw away that broken blade of yours, or let me just destroy it. The divine sword was still thinking about destroying her blade, bringing with it a sinister aura. The azure saber trembled in the storage space. Chapter 2948. Ji Xinyu raised her head and laughed. You really have a good idea. Unfortunately, I can't agree to it. As she spoke, the ice sword in her hand was once again cut into several pieces by the divine sword. And her fire sword had just spat out a round of fire, burning the divine sword red. The divine sword was still waiting for her to spray water at it, but it didn't expect Ji Xinyu's left hand to form a seal in the air, and a yellow sword instantly formed in her palm. She waved her hand, and a large wave of yellow soil greeted the divine sword. The divine sword didn't seem to have expected this at all, and it subconsciously used Ji Xinyu's move to block it. It didn't expect that after using this move, not only did it not avoid the yellow soil, it was as if it was attracting the soil, and its beautiful and clean sword body was wrapped in the yellow soil. This divine sword had a problem. It was very clean, and couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of dirt on its body. So it wasn't afraid of Ji Xinyu using fire and water to refine it, because the more she refined it, the cleaner it would be. But it was a little afraid of dirt, especially when it was burning red. It couldn't get the dirt off its body. What was worse was that after it was wrapped in the yellow soil, before it could shake it off, another wave of water hit it. If there was enough water, it could actually wash away the dirt on its body, but there was very little water, so little that it just happened to turn the dirt on its body into mud. It was already late at night, and the divine sword wrapped in mud dived into the lake at the foot of the mountain without a care, disappearing in the blink of an eye. It wanted to take a bath. It wanted to wash off the dirt on its body. Ji Xinyu also slowly landed on the ground. Senior sister. A person rushed out from the crowd of spectators. It was Xie Fenglu. He directly jumped in front of Ji Xinyu. Senior sister, does this count as your win? Come, wipe your sweat first. He took out a clean silk handkerchief from somewhere, and was about to wipe the sweat off Ji Xinyu's face. Ji Xinyu took a step back, and casually used a cleansing spell on herself. She returned to being clean and refreshed. She looked at Xie Fenglu. You haven't left yet? Before Princess Xinyu leaves the mountain, he won't leave. Princess Xinyu's skills are good. This is the first time I've seen a woman with such superb skills. I'm impressed. Wang Qingliu's robes fluttered as she walked over. She smiled and cupped her hands towards Ji Xinyu. Congratulations, Princess Xinyu, for defeating this divine sword. This battle will definitely be recorded in the annals of history. When Ji Xinyu and this sword fought, the wind and clouds in the sky roiled. Naturally, it also alarmed the heroes who were chased down the mountain and were waiting for the result. Once the divine sword recognized its master, the enchantment it set up around the hidden sword villa would also disappear. When the crowd saw the lively fight above, some of the bolder ones flew back up out of curiosity. Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu were two of them. So many people had witnessed Ji Shun, you make the divine sword fall from the sky, covered in mud. Although it had already fallen into the lake and did not bubble, it was obvious that this sword had lost. The swordsmiths of Hidden Sword Villa were so excited that their eyes were brimming with tears. This scourge could finally leave. Ji Shun Yu had been staring at the surface of the lake the entire time. Ever since the sword had landed, the surface of the lake had been churning nonstop like a boiling pot. It was obvious that the sword was struggling in the water. Some sharp-eyed people could even see that the sword was desperately swimming around in the lake, trying to get rid of the mud on its body. After a while, the sword rushed out of the water and hovered in front of Ji Shun Yu. Its muddy body trembled slightly. Chapter 2949. The sword rushed out of the water and hovered in front of Ji Shun Yu. Its muddy body trembled slightly, as if it was extremely angry. What's with this mud? Why can't I get it off? Ji Shun Yu hugged her arms and did not answer its question directly. She only said 3 words. You lost. The divine sword froze and stopped spamming. It suddenly rushed down to take a bath during the fight, which naturally meant that it lost. Although the divine sword was arrogant, it was still reasonable and did not deny it. Yes, I lost. The sword turned, and with a buzz in the air, the scabbard appeared and flew directly to Ji Shun Yu's waist. Then the sword flew out, and streaks of sword chi shot onto a large blue stone on the opposite side. A line of words appeared on the blue stone. I admit defeat. From today onwards, you are my master. Everyone saw this line of words, and the crowd instantly burst into cheers. Ji Shun Yu's lips twitched, and she communicated with the sword. I said, I won't accept you. I don't want to be your master. This sword was so arrogant. It even dared to tear its master apart. If she really accepted it, who knew how much trouble it would cause in the future? Ji Shun Yu did not want to always clean up after a sword. She did not want to sleep with a tiger beside her. But we have already established a blood contract. You are already my master. The divine sword finally said the main point. Ji Shun Yu. She gritted her teeth. Nonsense. When did I establish a blood contract with you? It was when you pulled me out. In order to force my sword chi, you bled a few drops of blood from your palm. That was your heart's blood. After it entered my body, it established a blood contract. The divine sword gave her the knowledge. Ji Shun Yu secretly clenched her fists. If that's the case, then why did you still fight with me? Since it had already recognized her as its master, then why did this broken sword fight with her for so long? I said, I want to see your actual ability. The divine sword did not regret it at all. Ji Shun Yu glanced at it. When you fought with me, it didn't look like you were just testing my skills. If she had reacted a little slower, she would have probably died under its sword. Since I want to force out your real skills, I naturally have to play for real. Then aren't you afraid of playing with your master to death? If that's the case, then I can only find the next master. Ji Shun Yu. So after killing its master, it could still find another master. No wonder it dared to be so unbridled. Ji Shun Yu laughed. So I'm your master now? That's right. You are now my master. I will become the best weapon in your hands, and send you to the peak of martial arts. The divine sword was full of ambition. It's Ji Shun Yu turned around. Although the martial arts you just learned are very powerful, once they are used for a long time, the structure of your sword body will change a little. Especially after being heated up, the sword body will be more likely to be stained with soil. At this time, if you stab into the ground again, the earth element will directly mix with the iron element in your body. Ji Shun Yu slowly explained the principle to it, and finally added, because it's an elemental change, once this soil enters your body, it can't be washed away with water. Chapter 2950. She looked at its muddy body again. Actually, you're just a little ugly right now. Your sharpness and functions won't be affected. Divine Sword was speechless. It was as if thunder had struck its head. It gritted its teeth. So you're saying that when you found out that I could learn your moves, you started to set me up? Ji Xinyu smiled. This isn't a trap, it's a strategy. She had long seen that if she used normal methods to fight with this sword, although she could win in the end, it would take a lot of energy and telekinesis. Maybe after this fight, she would use up 2/3 of her telekinesis and wouldn't be able to recover it for a year and a half. Ji Xinyu had fought countless battles in her life and was already an experienced fighter. On the battlefield, she was good at catching the opponent's weakness and then giving them a fatal blow. So when she found out that this proud divine sword was afraid of getting dirty and liked to learn other people's martial arts, she thought of this trick and made it unknowingly fall into her trap. Since the divine sword had chosen its master, everyone naturally bid farewell. This time, after everyone was eliminated by the divine sword and thrown off the mountain, the head of Hidden Sword Manor felt a little sorry for them. He sent someone to tell them that once the divine sword chose its master, Hidden Sword Manor would compensate everyone who came up the mountain. The head even promised to personally invite them again. However, after Ji Xinyu and the divine sword's fight, the manor sent another message, saying that the head of the manor had urgent matters to attend to and wouldn't be coming to see everyone off. However, the promised compensation was still available. Hidden Sword Manor's compensation was a sharp dagger for everyone. This dagger naturally wasn't a divine weapon, but it was still abnormally sharp and much stronger than the normal weapons on this continent. Everyone was naturally happy, and after thanking the head of the manor they left. Ji Xinyu naturally left with Xie Fenglu. According to Xie Fenglu's idea, the two of them should explore the martial arts world together, because he heard that there was a kind of clam in the crystal sky sea. This clam's pearl could illuminate 100 miles at night, and was an extremely rare treasure. He wanted to go there with Ji Xinyu to find that kind of clam. If they could find that pearl, then their master's birthday gift next year would be settled. Ji Xinyu looked up at the sky and made some calculations with her fingers in her sleeves. Then she agreed. What she needed to do could only be done on the 1st of every month, and it was only the 5th now. She still had more than 20 days, so she could make it in time. In that case, she might as well go and pick some clam pearls first. The earlier she could complete her master's birthday present, the earlier she could put down one of her worries. The crystallized sea was somewhat like the North Pole, an extremely cold place. There were countless large and small icebergs on the surface of the sea. The seawater was as blue as deep crystal. It was said that the bottom of the sea was completely paved with crystals and corals, like a crystal palace. Therefore, this sea area was called the Celestial Crystal Sea. The Celestial Crystal Sea was the most beautiful sea in the Fanning continent. It was also the most unpredictable sea. The weather on the sea was extremely unpredictable. One moment it was calm, and the surface of the sea could be used as a mirror for grooming oneself. The next moment, it would be a hurricane, and the roaring of the sea could set off waves that were hundreds of feet high. That power could destroy everything in the world. Even the icebergs floating on the surface of the sea were no exception. Oftentimes, after a hurricane, the icebergs on the surface of the sea would have a new appearance. The old icebergs might have been smashed, and the new icebergs would successfully reform. Because it was too dangerous, this place was deserted. Chapter 2951. Because it was too dangerous, this place was deserted. Even if everyone knew that this place produced these special clam pearls, not many people dared to try their luck. Even for Ji Xinyu, it was her first time here. Fortunately, Xie Fenglu knew the way, and rode a cloud to this place with Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu was wrapped in a fur coat, and sat on an ice rock, looking into the distance. The sun in the sky was as pale as a piece of paper, hanging there diagonally, without a trace of heat. Cold, this place was really cold. The bright moon clam you mentioned is in this area? Ji Xinyu looked around. Other than the pure white snow and the icy blue seawater, there were no other colors and no other creatures. It should be this area. Xie Fenglu nodded. However, I heard that the bright moon clam will only open its shell to dry its pearls in the middle of the night. We can only take them at that time. Ji Xinyu wrapped herself in the furry fur coat, and calculated the time with her fingers. The corner of her mouth twitched. There are still 8 hours before the middle of the night. 8 hours was 8 hours. In this place where the cold wind howled. If they just sat there, wouldn't they be frozen into an ice sculpture? Xie Fenglu didn't mind. Senior sister, this place is so beautiful, it's not bad for us to enjoy the sea view first. Ji Shenyu wrapped her clothes again. I don't think it's beautiful, but it's cold. Master, do you want to make a fire? The divine sword that had been hanging beside Ji Shenyu came over. Make a fire? Yes, she could make a big fire here. But in this place of ice and snow, where could she find wood to make a fire? The divine sword understood her thoughts and immediately said, Don't you know how to condense all kinds of elements? There must be wood elements in the air here. Ji Shenyu glanced at it. Wood elements are very scarce here. It's not easy to condense them. If she concentrated her power, it wasn't that she couldn't condense them, but it would take too much mental power. It wasn't worth it just to make a fire for warmth. Xie Fenglu had been looking at her the entire time. Although he could not see the divine sword in Ji Shenyu's mind, he could still hear Ji Shenyu's words, and knew that she could communicate with the divine sword. He nodded. The wood element here is much less than in other places. It's not easy to condense it. He slapped his head. I should have thought of this earlier. If I had known, I would have brought some wood. There's a type of fish here that tastes pretty good, especially when roasted. It's even more delicious. Unfortunately, it's a small world. I didn't expect to meet the two of you here. A clear voice rang out from the icy peak not far away and entered their ears. Xie Fenglu froze. Ji Shenyu raised her head and looked in the direction of the voice. They saw Huang Qinglu standing on top of the icy peak with her sleeves fluttering in the wind, looking at them with a smile. Xie Fenglu clenched his fists and looked at him coldly. Why are you so persistent? He's following us again. Huang Qinglu said innocently, Brother Xie, you're wrong. I arrived an hour earlier than you. With a twist of his finger, a piece of wood appeared in his palm. I've prepared some wood. Why don't we do it together? Huang Qinglu seemed to have come prepared. Not only did he bring enough wood, he also brought a warm bear skin, and even a fishing rod. Xie Fenglu looked at the things he took out and sneered. You brought enough things. Chapter 2952. Huang Qinglu had a good temper. Anne, thank you for the compliment. I've always thought things through. He laid the bear skin on a large ice rock and cupped his hands towards Ji Shenyu with a smile. It's okay for us two rough men to be cold. But Princess Shenyu is a girl after all. We still need to keep her warm. Let's sit on this. This person was gentle and meticulous, the complete opposite of Xie Fenglu's carefree personality. If they were together, they might really complement each other. Ji Shenyu didn't know what was going on, but she actually thought of this first. This Huang Qinglu came for Xie Fenglu. Ji Shenyu knew this very well. If it wasn't for the fact that she was afraid that her master would explode and slap Xie Fenglu's baby face into a cucumber in anger, Ji Shenyu would be very willing to help them. Or maybe she would plead for her junior brother when the time came. Actually, as long as it was true love, even if he was gay, she should still help him, right? With this thought in mind, Ji Shenyu politely thanked Huang Qinglu. This bear skin isn't small. The three of us can sit on it. Men and women shouldn't touch each other, senior sister. Let's not sit with him. Xie Fenglu was very straightforward. He cut off a wash basin-sized piece of the bear skin and threw it to Huang Qinglu. You sit on this. Huang Qinglu smiled. He wasn't picky. He took it and sat down. You guys start the fire, I'll fish. With a flick of the fishing rod, the long fishing line was thrown out into the sea. This young master Huang Qinglu really had a good temper. No matter how Xie Fenglu gave him attitude, he didn't get angry at all. He just did his own thing. Seeing this, Ji Shenyu admired him a little. Compared to him, his little junior brother was like an unreasonable young girl. She thought for a moment, then cut the bear skin in two and threw one piece to Xie Fenglu. You're right, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Don't sit with me. Xie Fenglu. He sat down on the bear skin weakly. He didn't give up and added, we're senior and junior brothers. Naturally, we should be closer than normal people. The rule of men and women not touching each other doesn't suit us. Ji Xinyu ignored him, her gaze landing on the pile of wood. The lumber that Huang Qinglu brought along was huge, and couldn't be lit all at once. It was best to chop it into firewood. She arranged a piece of wood, and was about to take out her knife when she suddenly thought of something. She ordered the divine sword that was hanging in the air beside her. Come, chop them into firewood. Chop them evenly. The divine sword immediately became angry. I am a divine sword, not a chopping axe. There are no axes here, only your blade and mine. Ji Xinyu tried to reason with it. Then let your saber go. I think it would be happy to do this kind of rough work. With me by your side, it will probably be able to do this in the future. The Azura blade buzzed in Ji Xinyu's storage space. It was used to chopping firewood, and out of habit, it wanted to jump out and help its master. But Ji Xinyu pressed it down. No, you've just been injured, and I haven't tempered you yet. You're not suitable for this kind of work for now. She looked at the divine sword again. If you still treat me as your master, then do this work, don't bargain. You seem to value this broken saber a lot. 10,000 of them can't compare to a small piece of my sword, but you treat it so well. Chapter 2953. The divine sword's heart was filled with indignation, and its words sounded like it was gnashing its teeth. Because it has followed me through life and death countless times. Countless times. It has blocked disaster for me at the most dangerous times. No matter what I do, it will not betray its master. If I die, it will definitely follow me. Can you do this? The divine sword was stuck there, and only after a while did it reply. It is only blindly loyal. A divine weapon will not be like this. Ji Xinyu smiled faintly. Loyalty is the most important characteristic of a weapon. It does not matter if it is a divine weapon or a mortal weapon. She looked at the pile of firewood again. If you can even refuse to do this, then if I really encounter danger in the future, how can I dare to use you? Divine sword. Ji Xinyu picked up a piece of firewood and casually chopped it. You don't have to do it. Her movements were clean and nimble. Once she circulated her energy in her palm, it was not inferior to a sword. The divine sword was stunned for a moment, then suddenly jumped up. The sword's body was like lightning, dancing around the pile of firewood in the air. A moment later, the pile of firewood was chopped into pieces of firewood as thick as a child's wrist, neatly chopped, and the size was the same, as if it was directly cut by a machine. The firewood even automatically formed a pile of firewood, forming a conical shape with a narrow top and a wide bottom, looking very orderly. This should be fine, right? The divine sword said this in Ji Xinyu's mind, then flew away, disappearing in the air in a flash. Ji Xinyu. This guy wouldn't just run away in anger, right? With this guy's temper and personality, it was very possible. She shook her head, raised her hand and shot out a flame, finally lighting a fire. The bonfire burned brightly, illuminating the faces of the three people. Xie Fenglu shaded his eyes with his hand, looked in the direction the divine sword flew, and said uncertainly, "It ran away just like that." Ji Xinyu replied, then sighed. It has a bad temper. She had never seen a weapon with such a bad temper. This divine sword really opened her eyes. Xie Fenglu also sighed. You letting it chop firewood is a bit insulting. It is a divine sword. Ji Xinyu finally took out her Azura saber. While gently wiping it with a cloth, she casually replied, To be my weapon, you have to be able to kill wolves and cut firewood. I often do the same thing with this knife. I even used this knife as a stick to grill chicken wings. Xie Fenglu. He looked at the saber and couldn't help but nod. That's true, your weapon must be very sturdy. He had personally seen Ji Xinyu use this saber to dig the ground. And that divine sword was indeed too delicate. And it was especially unruly. Once it leaves, will it not come back? Xie Feng looked in that direction for a long time, but did not see the shadow of the sword. Ji Xinyu also took a look and wasn't too sure. Perhaps. Just as the two of them were discussing this, a strange sound suddenly came from the sea in the distance. There was no wind, but waves nearly 1 meter high rose out of nowhere. There was also the sound of something hitting the water surface. What's going on? There were monsters in the sea? Are they coming out? The three of them immediately gripped their weapons tightly, staring at the waves that were getting closer and closer. Hey, there are so many fish! Xie Fenglu suddenly shouted. Ji Xinyu also saw that there were countless fish jumping on the surface of the sea, rolling towards them. Chapter 2954. It was as if there was something below that was driving the fishes away, causing them to panic. Ji Xinyu's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? This was that sword. Before she could finish her thought, a white light suddenly shot up from the sea, and in the blink of an eye, it reached the small ice mountain that Ji Xinyu and the others were on, and arrived in front of them. It was that divine sword. Its body had actually turned into a long strip, and on the long strip was a string of fish. Big ones, small ones, black ones, white ones, flowery ones. There were actually all kinds of fish. These fish were strung on the sword's body, and they were struggling with all their might, looking a little funny and bloody. The sword even wrote a line of words in Ji Xinyu's mind. What kind of fish do you want to eat? Pick one, I'll go down and catch it. So this sword didn't run away in a fit of anger, but went down to catch fish. Ji Xinyu was a little moved, and let Huang Qinglu, who knew the ropes, choose the most delicious variety. Huang Qinglu clicked her tongue in wonder, as she put away the fishing rod. She took care of the chosen fish in advance. The divine sword, on the other hand, tossed all of the fish down. Other than the one that Huang Qinglu had chosen, the rest were all directly absorbed by it. Ji Xinyu could only watch as it sucked the dozen or so fish dry. Not only Ji Xinyu, even Xie Fenglu was a little stunned. Was this a divine sword or a demon sword? The sword turned around and dived into the water again. It was probably going to catch the fish it had chosen. Ji Xinyu thought for a moment, then hurriedly took a step forward and shouted into the sea. Don't catch too many, just 3 more will do. The divine sword was indeed going to catch fish, and it caught fish much faster than Huang Qinglu. Before Huang Qinglu could deal with the 2 fish in her hands, the sword came up again. This time, there were 4 fat, white and tender fish strung on the sword. What was even more rare was that these fish were all the same size, like quadruplets. This time, even Huang Qinglu clicked her tongue in wonder and laughed. As expected of a divine sword, the size of these fish is just right. The meat is too tender if it's small. The meat is too tough if it's big. The meat is the most delicious if it's big. With the divine sword here, we don't have to worry about not being able to catch fish to eat. The divine sword gleamed proudly, then circled around Ji Xinyu, as if waiting for her praise. Ji Xinyu smiled and didn't say anything. She formed a seal with her fingers, and then flicked it at the divine sword. A faint green light surrounded the divine sword. The divine sword trembled, and instinctively dodged with a hum. Then it hovered above Ji Xinyu. Master, what are you doing? Ji Xinyu crossed her arms and looked at it. What do you think I'm doing? She then looked at it from head to toe and said indifferently, You can go look at your body. The divine sword should be suspicious. It flew in front of an ice rock that was as smooth as a mirror. The ice rock clearly reflected the body of its sword. The originally modeled sword had actually lost many of its spots, revealing its snow-white bottom. It turned out that its master was removing those dirty spots from its body. The divine sword was excited. He immediately flew in front of Ji Xinyu. So these spots can be removed. Master, cast another spell on me and remove all of them. Remove all of them. Ji Xinyu crossed her arms and smiled. My spell just now could have removed all the spots on your body, but you didn't believe me and directly dodged. It seems that you still don't treat me as your master. Chapter 2955. The divine sword paused and admitted its mistake. I'm sorry. It circled around Ji Xinyu again, paused for a moment, and rubbed the hilt of its sword against her shoulder. Master, please use that spell again. I won't dodge it this time. Ji Xinyu yawned. That won't do. That spell has a limit. It can only be used once a month. The divine sword. It seemed to have been hit by a blow, lying down and going back into the scabbard. Ji Xinyu ignored it, and looked at Huang Qinglu roasting fish. Xie Fenglu couldn't help but laugh. Senior sister, this sword is very interesting. Have you given it a name? Ji Xinyu paused and raised her eyebrows in surprise. Isn't it called the Divine Sword? Xie Fenglu laughed. That's just the name everyone gave it. After all, this kind of divine weapon is rare in the world. You need to give it another name. Ji Xinyu rubbed her eyebrows. I see. Yes, senior sister, you should give it another name. Give it a nice name after all, it's so extraordinary. That's true, Ji Xinyu muttered. Song. The divine sword came out of its scabbard again, standing upright in front of Ji Xinyu, as if it was looking at her expectantly. Ji Xinyu looked at it for a moment, then said a name. Flower sword. The divine sword trembled. It didn't seem to believe that she would give it such a vulgar name. So it moved closer to her, so that she could see it more clearly. At the same time, it said in her mind, it's too vulgar, you need to give it a domineering name. Ji Xinyu felt that she didn't have enough literary cells, but the divine sword's words gave her some inspiration. Then what about Overlord Sword? The divine sword. It said in Ji Xinyu's mind again, but because it was too excited, the words it said were trembling. Don't give it a random name. You only have 3 chances to give it a name, so don't give it a random name. I don't want to be so straightforward, it's not beautiful. Ji Xinyu was worried. She was too lazy to waste her brain cells on these things. But this divine sword had so many problems. She suggested to the divine sword. Since you're so cultured, why don't you give it a name? The divine sword was indignant. It has to be decided by master. As he only had 1 chance, the divine sword hurriedly instructed. Discuss with me before you speak. It must be domineering and meaningful. Ji Xinyu felt a headache coming on. She wasn't good at being domineering and insightful. She simply handed the problem over to Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu. Can you two help me think of a domineering and meaningful name? The divine sword knew that it could not rely too much on its master. So it immediately turned around and flew in front of the 2 people. It circled around them and tried its best to shine brightly, trying its best to show that it was extraordinary. Divine Wind Sword? Divine Martial Sword. Wind Flower Sword. Qianquan Sword. The 2 of them were quite enthusiastic. Sure enough, they came up with some names for it. These names weren't too vulgar, but the divine sword felt that they didn't fit its style. They were all rejected. In the end, it was Xie Fenglu who came up with an idea. He smiled and said, Senior sister, since it's your treasured sword, why don't we name it after you? How about we call it the Moon God Sword? The divine sword paused for a moment, then immediately became excited, and continuously spammed in Ji Xinyu's mind. Good. Good. That's a good name, let's call it that. I'm called the Moon God Sword. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly. This name is just reversing my name. Chapter 2956. Master, your name is pretty good. If it's reversed, then so be it. I think it's pretty good. Since it had agreed, Ji Xinyu was too lazy to waste her brain cells. She nodded. Alright then, let's call it Moon God Sword. Just as she said this, a ball of light flashed across the divine sword. When the light dissipated, 3 ancient characters appeared on the sword. Moon God Sword. The Moon God Sword shone on the mirror like ice stone. When it saw the name on its sword, it immediately became happy. It also found Xie Fenglu pleasing to the eye. It circled around him a few times and even flashed at him. Xie Fenglu laughed. Are you expressing your good feelings towards me? Haha, you are my senior sister's sword. Senior sister and I are inseparable. Who knows, I might even become half your master in the future. Being able to give you a name might prove a kind of fate. His words had a hidden meaning. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly. Old 9, you're talking nonsense again. Senior sister, I'm serious. The Moon God Sword is your sword, and I gave it a name that it happened to like. This proves that we are fated. Don't you think so? Moon God Sword. The last sentence was directed at the Moon God Sword. The Moon God Sword had a good impression of him, so it immediately lit up again. Then it circled around the 2 of them. Because it was spinning very fast, it left behind an afterimage in the air. It was as if there was a shining silver circle behind the 2 of them. That circle was even in the shape of a heart, Adding a bit of romance, Xie Fenglu laughed. Senior sister, look, the moon god's sword also thinks highly of us. The circle it drew is like the moon god's red line. Ji Xinyu grabbed the sword and looked at it with a smile that was not a smile. You're messing around again. Don't you want to get rid of the spots on your body? The moon god's sword shook and automatically went back into its sheath. It stopped messing around. Xie Fenglu sighed. Senior sister, this is your fault. Since the moon god's sword is a divine weapon, it must have foresight. It's just telling the truth. Why are you threatening it like that? Just as Ji Xinyue was about to say something, she suddenly smelled something, and turned to look at Huang Qinglu. Hey, your fish is burnt. Huang Qinglu seemed to be distracted. He looked down at the fish in his hand and smiled. I'm sorry. With a flick of his wrist, the fish flew out in a parabolic arc, and fell back into the sea. Xie Fengliu's heart ached. What's wrong with you? You can even burn a grilled fish. Huang Qinglu raised his head. Under the light blue sky, his eyes were a little deep, and there seemed to be floating ice flashing at the bottom of his eyes. Xie Fenglu felt a chill in his heart. He raised his chin slightly and said, Why are you looking at me? Am I wrong? Huang Qinglu suddenly smiled. That smile was faintly evil. Look at you. Look at you. It's nothing. I'll just roast it again. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. He went back to the fish. Ji Shenyu watched from the side. She felt that her junior brother was like a little girl throwing a tantrum in front of Huang Qinglu. The interaction between the two of them was indeed a little strange. The more she looked, the more they looked like a couple. Ji Shenyu seemed to see her master carrying a big stick and rushing over with a murderous aura. She could not help but rub her eyebrows. It seemed that this junior brother was destined to make her worry. Old Nine, when did you meet this young Master Huang? Ji Shenyu felt that it was necessary to ask. Chapter 2957. Xie Fenglu stiffened and replied calmly, I've known him for a long time. Senior sister, you can't befriend this person. Ignore him. Ji Shenyu. This Huang Qinglu obviously had other thoughts about Xie Fenglu. She didn't believe that her junior brother couldn't tell. If he could tell and still allowed Huang Qinglu to be by his side, then she would have to reconsider. She had only asked about Huang Qinglu, and this junior brother of hers was already so nervous. Could it be that he was jealous? Alright, a friend's wife shouldn't be bullied. Since Huang Qinglu was her junior brother's sweetheart, she should keep her distance. Maybe Huang Qinglu could become her sister-in-law. However, looking at the way the two of them interacted, why did she feel that her junior brother would become her wife? If they really became a couple, what should she call Huang Qinglu? Sister-in-law? Sister-in-law? Xie Fenglu naturally didn't know that his senior sister's thoughts had already spread out 8,000 miles. Huang Qinglu had already finished roasting a fish and handed it to Xie Fenglu. Try it and see how my cooking is. Xie Fenglu took the fish and removed all the bones, then handed it to Ji Shenyu. Senior sister, try it first. Ji Shenyu. She seemed to see Huang Qinglu's murderous gaze. She waved her hand. No need, you can eat it yourself. Afraid that Xie Fenglu would desperately refuse, she added. See if it's salty. Xie Fenglu then retracted his hand. Alright, I'll try it first. I know senior sister's taste, so I should be able to taste if it suits you. Ji Shenyu. Brat, are you here to make enemies for me? She felt that the temperature around her seemed to drop by 1 or 2 degrees. She couldn't help but look at her junior brother, and then at Huang Qinglu. She felt that she was unnecessary. Ji Shenyu decisively took a fish over. I'll roast it myself. It's not right to always let brother Huang roast it alone. Xie Fenglu. Huang Qinglu laughed. It's fine. I'm used to doing this. Princess Shenyu, you don't have to interfere. Ji Shenyu thought, if I don't interfere, you might stab me in the back. She processed the fish quickly and soon put it on the fire. It's okay. I like to eat my own roasted fish. At this point, Huang Qinglu did not say anything else. Ji Shenyu concentrated on roasting the fish. Just as the fish was about to be cooked, Xie Fenglu, who was sitting at the side, suddenly shouted, Kai Guang! Look, there's colorful light over there. Hearing this, Ji Shenyu raised her head. and looked in the direction he was pointing. Her eyes lit up. There were colorful lights in the distant horizon. The colorful lights flickered and flickered. It was extremely beautiful. It was Ji Xinyu's first time seeing this kind of light. Her heart skipped a beat, and she asked excitedly, "Could it be that the moonlight clam's pearl is shining?" "That's not the case. It's a special kind of weather in this place. It's called the light of mirage, and it often appears here. As for the moonlight clams, now is not the time for them to appear. Once they appear, they will emit a kind of crimson light, which is very easy to identify." Huang Qinglu was obviously an expert in this area, and she was imparting knowledge to the siblings. Ji Xinyu's heart skipped a beat. Brother Huang seems to be very familiar with this place. Have you been here before? Huang Qinglu flipped the fish in her hand as she replied, "Yes, no one is more familiar with this place than me." Ji Xinyu was a little puzzled. This place could be said to be incomparably desolate. Not even a blade of grass grew here. If he was familiar with this place, then he must have come here often. Why did he come here often? Chapter 2958. She grilled the fish as she pondered. Inadvertently, she glanced at the mirage again. With this glance, she was suddenly stunned. The rainbow-colored mirage slowly unfurled like a painting, and pavilions gradually began to appear within the painting. What appeared in the painting seemed to be a tea house. There were two people sitting opposite each other by the window of the tea house. One of them was handsome and carefree. It was Rongyu Tianlan. Sitting across from him was a young girl in white. Her hair was like clouds, and her appearance was extremely beautiful. Her every move carried a kind of romantic charm. The two of them seemed to be playing chess. Both of them were focused. A waiter brought over a plate of exquisite new snacks and placed it beside Rongyu Tianlan. Rongyu Tianlan glanced at it and pushed it to the young lady in white. She seemed to say something. The young lady in white smiled sweetly and took the snack. She stretched out her snow-white hand and picked up a piece. She put it in her mouth and tasted it for a moment. Then, she nodded at Rongyu Tianlan, as if she liked it very much. Rongyu Tianlan also smiled and said a few more words to the waiter. The waiter immediately nodded and bowed before leaving. The young lady in white covered her small mouth and looked at Rongyu Tianlan from the corner of her eyes. Because only images were shown, and there was no sound, Ji Xinyu did not know what they were talking about. She only saw the two of them talking and laughing happily. The young lady was a standard beauty. Her every move revealed a different style and elegance. It was a kind of elegance that came from her bones. It could not be compared to the elegance that Yu Xueshang deliberately put on. The two of them chatted and played chess. The scene looked unusually harmonious and beautiful. A word would appear in one's mind. Perfect couple. They were truly a perfect couple. Senior sister, your fish is burnt. Xie Fengliu's shout brought Ji Xinyu back to her senses. She hurriedly lowered her head and found that half of her grilled fish was burnt. Just now, Huang Qingliu's grilled fish had only burnt a layer of fish skin. She had burnt half of the fish. The fish was almost burning. Senior sister, your hand. Without any explanation, Xie Fengliu threw the skewer of fish in her hand away. Looking at her palm, he said in a bad tone, "It's so hot that it's blistering." Ji Xinyu also lowered her head and looked at her palm. She had been too focused on watching the scene just now, and the flame had directly licked the metal skewer, causing it to turn red from the heat, and even scalding her palm. "I'm fine, it's just a blister." Ji Xinyu retracted her hand and took out a golden sore ointment to apply to the blisters on her palm. Xie Fengliu quickly stopped her. "No, this is not for burns. This medicine is for snake venom. Senior sister, you took the wrong medicine." Ji Xinyu looked at the medicine in her hand and couldn't help but smile. "These two medicine bottles are too similar. I took the wrong one." She took the medicine back and took out another bottle. This time, he didn't make a mistake. Xie Fengliu's expression did not look good. He looked at her without saying a word. After Ji Xinyu finished applying the medicine, her gaze swept over the illusory scene in the distance. "Is that the legendary mirage? I didn't expect to see an acquaintance there." Huang Qinglu nodded. "It is indeed a mirage. According to the principle of a mirage, this scene was not created for no reason. It was just an image of a certain place being refracted by the atmosphere. In other words, everything on the screen was real. It had really happened. Chapter 2959. It might be happening right now. Or it might have happened in the past. Xie Fenglu glanced at the image and suddenly sneered. Senior sister, I remember telling you that Rongyue Tianlan wanted to fight for a sword for a woman? This was the woman I saw at that time. Ji Shenhua looked at the woman carefully. She looks unfamiliar. And looking at the immortal light around her, she should be at the level of a supreme god. There were very few women on this continent who could cultivate to the level of a supreme god. They could be said to be as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. If this woman was from this continent, it would be impossible for such a beautiful woman to be unknown to the public with her cultivation level. Xie Fenglu also nodded. She is indeed unfamiliar. This is also my first time seeing her. He then turned to look at Huang Qinglu. What about you? You are experienced and knowledgeable. Have you seen her before? Huang Qinglu shook her head. No. She then pondered for a moment. Maybe she is not from this continent. Xie Fenglu clapped his hands. That's possible. After all, this supreme immortal Rongyue left this continent for a period of time. This could be a woman he dated on another continent. This person is so romantic. He must have many female confidants on other continents. I didn't expect this one to find him here. Look at them, their relationship is quite good. Ji Shenhua did not say anything else. She patted the moon god's sword that was suspended there. Can you go catch a few more fish? The moon god's sword was just about to show itself when it immediately dived into the sea and disappeared. A moment later, it indeed skewered 4 more fish. This mirage took an unusually long time. Ji Shenhua roasted 2 fish in a row, but the image did not disappear. It was still going on in an orderly manner. The 2 of them had been drinking tea and playing chess, occasionally exchanging a few words. During this period of time, a multicolored bird flew over and stopped on the white-clothed girl's shoulder, combing its feathers, looking very spirited. The girl gently stroked the colorful bird's feathers, smiling sweetly. Rongyue Tianlan's gaze also fell on the bird. He took out a blue fruit from somewhere and personally fed it to the bird. The bird was obviously familiar with Rongyue Tianlan. It jumped onto his palm and pecked at the fruit. This bird is a soul-searching bird. Huang Qingliu's eyes were filled with surprise. Ji Shenhua raised her eyebrows. Brother Huang recognizes this bird? Huang Qinglu nodded. I've seen it once, but it's extremely rare. It is said that this kind of bird can directly recognize a person's soul and is used to seeing through all disguises. Ji Shenyu was a little absent-minded. She nodded and casually replied, It is indeed miraculous. In front of this bird, it seems that anyone's disguise is useless? Huang Qinglu nodded. That should be the case. I've only heard of it, but I don't know its specific functions. However, I heard that this kind of bird is extremely difficult to feed. It doesn't eat the 5 grains, wolves, or any kind of meat. It lives on blades and swords. Now, even Xie Fenglu was curious. Feeding on swords and knives? What a strange bird. No, it's eating the fruit now. That fruit is not an ordinary fruit, it's the Suwen spirit fruit. This bird will occasionally eat this kind of fruit as a snack. Xie Fengliu's mouth was half open. Is that the Suwen spirit fruit? This fruit can help one to pass through the tribulation. It's something that people in the Jianghu yearn for even in their dreams. I didn't expect him to feed it to someone else's bird. Huang Qinglu waved her fan and smiled. Perhaps the bird was raised by both of them. Can everyone guess who that white-clothed girl is? Chapter 2960. Xie Fenglu looked at it for a moment and nodded. That's true. This bird seems to be very familiar with Supreme Immortal Rongyu. Perhaps they really raised it together. As they spoke, the bird had already finished eating the fruit. It jumped twice in Rongyu Tianlan's palm, looking very happy. Rongyu Tianlan was also very happy. With a flip of his wrist, a shiny dagger appeared in his palm. Jishinyue's heart skipped a beat. That dagger was a gift from the hidden sword manor to everyone. It seemed that Rongyu Tianlan had also received one. Furthermore, His dagger was obviously of a higher grade than the others. There was a faint glow on the tip of the dagger. It should already have a little bit of spirituality. The bird immediately lowered its head to peck at the dagger. With one bite, the dagger was missing a piece. The bird's body was not big, but it ate the dagger like it was tofu. It did not take long for it to finish eating the dagger. The girl in white continued to watch everything with a smile. After the bird finished eating, she beckoned to it. The bird immediately flew to her palm and rubbed its beak affectionately against her palm. Then, it turned its head and looked at Rong Yuetian eagerly, as if it had not had its fill. Huang Qinglu smiled and shook her head. This bird is really precious. It's eating too high-end. Xie Fenglu looked at the divine sword that was hanging beside Ji Xinyue. I think this moon god sword is probably not enough for it to eat. The moon god sword was immediately angry. The tip of the sword pointed at the bird in the mirage. Suddenly, it buzzed and rushed towards the mirage like lightning. It looked like it wanted to kill the bird when it saw its own kind being destroyed. Ji Xinyue shook her head. Although the moon god sword had spirituality, it was still a sword. It could not tell that the mirage was actually an illusion. Hey, isn't that the hidden sword Manor's Manor Lord? Xie Fenglu shouted again. Ji Xinyue looked up and saw the Manor Lord of the Hidden Sword Manor appear out of thin air in the tea house. His face was a little red, and there were beads of sweat on his forehead. It was obvious that he was in a hurry. The Manor Lord did not bother to exchange greetings with the two of them. With a flip of his palm, a blue crescent weapon appeared in his hand, and he handed it to Rong Yuetianlan. Obviously, this crescent weapon was specially made for Rong Yuetianlan. Rong Yuetianlan's eyes lit up. She stood up and took the weapon. She flicked it with her fingers. The crescent weapon was as blue as the sky, without a trace of impurities. The flowing light seemed to have stars twinkling on it. There was no need to test the blade. Just by looking at the color of this crescent-shaped weapon, one could tell that this was definitely an extremely rare divine weapon. Although it might not be as good as the lunar god sword, it was better than any other weapon Ji Xinyue had ever seen. Rong Yuetian sized up the weapon a few times, and a gratified look appeared in her eyes. She then passed it to the girl in white. The girl in white took it and stroked the crescent blade inch by inch with her fingers. She nodded slightly at Rong Yuetian. Rong Yuetian seemed to be relieved. She thanked the villa master of the Hidden Sword Villa, and even handed him a dark golden medal. Huang Qinglu muttered. Black gold iron. This exalted immortal Rongyu is truly extraordinarily generous. Xian gold iron was one of the best materials for crafting weapons. A piece the size of a finger could be worth tens of thousands of gold. It was even more precious than diamonds. It was also priceless and could not be bought. But the piece that Rong Yuetianlan handed to the villa master was as big as a dog's head. This piece could be said to be priceless. If this material was used to craft a weapon, it would definitely be forged into a divine weapon that was comparable to the lunar god sword. Chapter 2961. The Manor Lord's usually cold face couldn't help but reveal joy. He thanked Rong Yuetianlan, then happily carried the black gold iron away. Rong Yuetianlan's gaze fell on the crescent blade. He let out a sigh of relief and gestured to the soul-seeking bird on the white-clothed girl's shoulder. The soul-seeking bird couldn't hold back and immediately flew down. It stretched out its curved beak and began to peck at the crescent blade. He spent so much effort to get the Manor Lord of Hidden Sword Manor to make this crescent blade just to feed the bird. Xie Fenglu clenched his fists. He hated this kind of wasteful behavior the most. He looked at Ji Xinyue again. Looks like helping you get the sword was just something he did casually. His main purpose in coming to Hidden Sword Manor was this crescent blade. Ji Xinyue smiled. I have nothing to do with him anymore. It's already good enough that he helped me get the sword. Even if it's just a casual gesture, it's still a kindness. I'm still very grateful. I will definitely repay this kindness. She took a light breath and looked around. The moonlight clam should be drying soon, right? Huang Qinglu nodded. It should be soon. The mirage finally disappeared, and so did the light from the mirage. The sky and earth returned to a faint blue color. The moon god sword finally flew back. It obviously didn't achieve its goal, and the entire sword looked listless. Ji Xinyue began to tidy up her clothes, preparing to enter the water. According to Huang Qinglu, the moonlight clam would only open for an hour to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. After an hour, it would close its shell and sink into the deep sea ice, where it couldn't be dug out. Therefore, they had to act quickly and finish within an hour. Xie Fenglu looked at the busy Ji Xinyue and couldn't help but frown. Senior sister, the water here is too cold. It's not good for a girl's body. Wait here later, Huang Qinglu and I will go down. Ji Xinyue was already prepared. She glanced at Xie Fenglu. When have you ever seen me waiting to eat ready-made food? The underwater environment is complicated, and your swimming skills are average. If something really happens, you won't be able to buy any medicine for regret. If that really happens, I'll bang my head against the wall. Xie Fenglu was touched. Senior sister, I didn't know you cared about me so much. Ji Xinyue pulled up her sleeves. Of course I care about you. If anything happens to you under my watch, Master will skin me alive. He then pulled off the jade pendant from his waist and threw it into his hand. How many times have I told you? When you go out to do something, don't bring so many random things with you, lest you get hooked by something. Okay, I'll be careful. Xie Fenglu was obviously used to being scolded. Not only was he not angry, but he was also happy to endure it. Pa! The profound ice beneath Huang Qinglu's feet cracked. Ji Xinyue glanced at him. Huang Qinglu had a smile on his face, but there seemed to be a chill around him. He did not look at Ji Xinyue and Xie Fenglu. Instead, he turned his head and looked towards the far east. The moonlight clam has opened its shell. A crimson light shot out from the surface of the sea and into the sky. The light was even more brilliant than the rosy clouds, illuminating the entire sky in an instant. The moon god sword was obviously excited. The sword shadow moved and was about to attack first. Huang Qinglu gripped the sword hilt and said calmly, once the moonlight clam is disturbed, it will immediately close its shell. If it really senses danger, it will immediately destroy the clam pearl. At that time, all our efforts will be for naught. So if we want to pluck the pearl, we need to ambush it. Chapter 2962. After he finished speaking, he let go of the moon god sword's hilt and said politely, excuse me. The moon god sword returned to Ji Xinyue's side. Ji Xinyue put it back into its scabbard and said, if I don't tell you to come out, don't come out. She was afraid that the sword would be disobedient and cause trouble, so she put it in her storage space. The moon god sword was actually very obedient this time, and let Ji Xinyue hide it, without any resistance. Because they were prepared in advance, the three of them entered the water smoothly, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Although she was mentally prepared, and had done enough homework to protect herself, when she entered the water, Ji Xinyue still felt the bone-chilling cold. The water was far colder than she imagined, and once she entered the water, her hands and feet felt like they were going to freeze. She circulated her energy a few times, and only then did she regain her senses. Although Xie Fenglu was a man, and his body was more masculine, his cultivation was not as good as Ji Xinyue's. Not long after he entered the water, his nose was blue and his face was white. His teeth chattered nonstop, and he fell behind in a moment. Ji Xinyue was afraid that he would faint in the water, and was about to go over to take a look when she heard the sound of water splashing. Huang Qinglu, who had been leading the way, suddenly flipped over and went straight for Xie Fenglu. Without any explanation, he grabbed Xie Fenglu's hand. Xie Fenglu wanted to struggle, but he was obviously not Huang Qinglu's opponent in the water, and was restrained in a moment. Then he was dragged forward by him. He quickly caught up with Ji Xinyue and asked, how are you? Do you want me to bring you? Ji Xinyue shook her head. She had already adapted to the temperature of the water. No need, I can do it myself. Huang Qinglu glanced at her, and did not force her and said, then be careful. He brought Xie Fenglu forward. He kept holding Xie Fenglu's arm tightly, and Xie Fenglu gritted his teeth and said, don't leave my senior sister behind. Don't have any bad ideas. Huang Qinglu narrowed his eyes and chuckled. Be good, I won't do anything to her. Young master, I care about what you care about. I've been helping you all this time, haven't I? Who needs your help? I said. I'm not your young master. You've got the wrong person. That's a mistake. Huang Qingliu's tone was casual. She swam in the water like a pike. Her posture was graceful and natural, as if she was born here. You. Xie Fenglu was so angry that he trembled. He suddenly sneered. You keep calling me young master, but you don't give me any respect. How else do you want me to respect you? Huang Qinglu raised an eyebrow. In front of others, haven't I always not fought back when you hit me or scolded me? Isn't it just helping you with this and that? But how can we force the young lord to do something? You often disregard my wishes and force me to do things. Is this your attitude towards young master? That's because you haven't awakened yet. Huang Qingliu's voice was gentle. When you truly awaken, I naturally won't be able to force you. Xie Fenglu clenched his fist. Awakening. Awakening. Wake up like a ghost. He just didn't want to wake up. He did a good job as Xie Fenglu. The only thing that made him unhappy was that Huang Qinglu was sticking to him like candy. He couldn't get rid of her, he couldn't beat her, and he couldn't expose her identity. Xie Fenglu was more than a little depressed. He was freezing in the water. Chapter 2963. He was almost frozen in the water, but after Huang Qinglu held his arm, his blood vessels that had almost stagnated started to flow again. It was as if there was a warm cover around his body, isolating him from the cold sea water. He couldn't help but look back at Ji Shenyue. She had been following behind them. Although her face was pale from the cold, her movements were still clean and neat, not lagging behind at all. His senior sister was indeed the strongest. Logically speaking, this sea was not suitable for women to come down. But she had come down and swam better than him. She made him, a man pale in comparison. Senior sister. Why did such a good senior sister like someone else? He was the one who had been by her side the longest. Xie Fengliu's eyes flashed with pain. Do you really like her that much? Huang Qinglu asked again. It has nothing to do with you. Indeed, it has nothing to do with me. Huang Qinglu chuckled. But I also know that girls like men who are stronger than them, who can save them in times of crisis. Not someone whose martial arts are not as good as hers, who only knows how to call her senior sister, and even needs her to take care of him. Xie Fenglu gritted his teeth. I've only been practicing martial arts for a short time. If I cultivate for another 3,000 to 5,000 years, I won't be worse than Rongyue Tianlan. The problem is, will she wait for you for 3,000 to 5,000 years? What's more, after 3,000 to 5,000 years, when you improve, they will also improve. Their aptitude is also the best. You will never catch up with them through normal channels. It's better to awaken. You might still have hope. Xie Fenglu clenched his fists tightly. After a while he said, Don't even think about it. You're just trying to make me into another person. Let me tell you, don't even think about it. My senior sister once said that we should do everything openly. I want to improve myself openly. I am Xie Fenglu, not anyone else. Huang Qinglu glanced at him sideways. His gaze was like the light of the icy sea, dark and deep. Xie Fenglu felt an inexplicable chill. He looked at him warily. What are you up to now? Huang Qinglu smiled. What kind of bad ideas can I have? Let's go and pick the pearls to send your master off. He dragged him and continued to swim forward. Ji Shenyue looked calm on the surface, but in fact, she had been secretly observing Huang Qinglu. She had a feeling that this person had a strong background and was very mysterious. Ji Shenyue knew that there were people like hermits in this world. Some people didn't like to be in the limelight and preferred to blend in with the crowd. Therefore, even if they had super strong martial arts, they were still unknown in Jianghu. Therefore, when she first saw Huang Qinglu, she was not very surprised when she knew that he was an expert but not famous. He thought that he was also an otherworldly expert. She became friends with Xie Fenglu by accident and fell in love with him at first sight. That was why she entered the world and followed Xie Fenglu. Moreover, he was really good to Xie Fenglu. Xie Fenglu often gave him attitude, but he still had no complaints. Seeing how well Huang Qinglu treated Xie Fenglu, Ji Shenyue was even a little touched. After all, this junior brother of his was once an orphan, And what he lacked the most was love. Other than being worried that her master would sweep them away, Ji Xinyu was also very happy for her junior apprentice brother, that someone was sincerely treating him well. This Huang Qinglu seemed to be slightly hostile towards her. And Ji Xinyu also expressed her understanding. If this person truly likes Xie Fenglu, he would naturally dislike her and be jealous of her. Chapter 2964. These were all actions that lovers should do, so Ji Xinyu did not take it to heart. When Huang Qinglu ignored Xie Fengliu's struggle and forcefully brought him forward, Ji Xinyu felt touched and amused at first. But as she watched, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. This Huang Qinglu was indeed very good to Xie Fenglu, but Xie Fenglu was obviously unwilling this time, but was forced to move forward by Huang Qinglu. Although her junior brother usually did things carelessly, he was not a narrow-minded person, nor was he an awkward person. But now, Ji Xinyu felt that her junior brother seemed to have something that was hard to say. As if he was being held hostage, she looked at Huang Qingliu's swimming posture again. In such a cold sea, he swam freely and casually, as if he was a native of this place, and the deep sea was his hometown. This place was deserted, and even birds could not fly here, so it was impossible for there to be a native. If there were, they should not be humans. Of course, on this continent, immortals and devils coexisted, and there were many races that were not human. For example, the Demon Clan, the Devil Clan, the Sharkman Clan, and the Snake Clan. However, these races were few in number and could not form a true scale, so they usually hid in barren mountains and unruly rivers. There were also those who hid their auras and lived in the human world. Although the sea was beautiful, it should be considered a dangerous place. Could it be that this Huang Qinglu was from the Sharkman clan or the Demon Clan? No, the people of the Demon Clan had more or less demon chi on their bodies. After these people became stronger, although they could hide their demon chi, they could only hide it from the eyes of ordinary people. They could not hide it from the eyes of an immortal like Ji Xinyu. This Huang Qinglu did not have any demon chi or devil chi on his body, so he should not be from the Demon Clan or the Demon Clan. Could it be that he was from the Sharkman clan? The Sharkman clan had a beautiful appearance and a gentle nature, and were indeed somewhat similar to Huang Qinglu. Ji Xinyu was not a person who easily trusted people. She was also on guard against this Huang Qinglu at the beginning, but when she asked Xie Fenglu in private a few times, Xie Fenglu stammered, and only told her not to pay attention to this person. He did not say anything bad about this person, and even worked with this Huang Qinglu a few times, unknowingly trusted this person. This made Ji Xinyu's wariness towards him gradually disappear, and even treated him as Xie Fengliu's family. But now, she felt that something was wrong. She swam forward, trying to catch up and keep abreast of them. Huang Qinglu suddenly turned around and glanced at her. The corners of her lips curled up into a smile. This smile had a deep meaning. In this deep blue water, there was a strange feeling. Ji Xinyu felt a chill in her heart. She paused for a moment, her fingers gripping the hilt of her dagger tightly. Almost at the same time, the seawater around Ji Xinyu suddenly surged, and a pitch-black whirlpool appeared beside her. This whirlpool appeared too suddenly, and Ji Xinyu was not prepared for it. She was immediately sucked into the whirlpool, and her body involuntarily turned and was pulled into the whirlpool. The suction force of this whirlpool was extremely strong. Ji Xinyu felt as if she had fallen into a huge roller and was being madly rotated by the whirlpool. The sound of water splashing filled her ears. She could only faintly hear Xie Fenglu shouting, "Senior sister." After all, they were in the water, and Xie Fenglu was not a good swimmer. If he had only used his voice, it would have been better. But when he shouted in a hurry, just as the shout rushed out of his throat, he was gulped down a large mouthful of seawater. He choked until his mind was muddled, and he almost fainted. He opened his mouth to cough, but suddenly, something soft blocked his lips, and a fresh breath entered his mouth. Chapter 2965. He opened his mouth, and was about to cough when he felt something soft on his lips. A fresh breath entered his mouth. At the same time, he felt his arms tighten, as he was trapped in Huang Qingliu's arms. He could not move at all. This breath was the breath of life. Xie Fenglu finally caught his breath, shouting in the water, "Are you an idiot?" Huang Qingliu's voice rang in Xie Fenglu's ears. Xie Fenglu still ignored him. He desperately looked back at the whirlpool. Ji Xinyue's petite body was spinning in the whirlpool. She seemed to be struggling with all her might, but she could not break free from the whirlpool's power. Where did the whirlpool in the deep sea lead to? It might even lead to hell. If Ji Xinyue was completely sucked in, she would probably die. Xie Fengliu's eyes were bloodshot. He grabbed Huang Qingliu's sleeve. Where did this whirlpool come from? Save her! Save her! Huang Qingliu also glanced back and said indifferently, "She can't be saved." He pulled Xie Fenglu and continued to swim forward. Xie Fenglu panicked and said angrily, "You coward, if you don't save her I will." He wanted to slap Huang Qingliu away and fight for his life. Huang Qingliu flicked his finger, and a blue light enveloped Xie Fenglu. "Don't be rash. No one can escape from this demonic whirlpool. Aren't you going to collect clam pearls? It will be too late if you delay any longer." After being enveloped by the blue light, Xie Fengliu's entire body stiffened. He glared at him and said word by word, "I don't like clam pearls. I only want to save my senior sister. If anything happens to her, I will not let you off easily." Huang Qingliu narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. "With your current martial arts, how can you punish me?" Xie Fenglu was speechless. He clenched his fists, his nails almost digging into his flesh. You. He looked as if he wanted to swallow Huang Qingliu whole. Huang Qingliu said slowly, "Only the strong have the right to protect the people around them. Only the strong have the right to punish others. Young master, do you still not want to awaken? Do you still want to be Xie Fenglu?" Xie Fengliu's handsome face turned green and white. When his anger reached its peak, he calmed down. "Huang Qingliu, you made this whirlpool, right? You want to use this to stimulate me to awaken and become your young lord, right? Then let me tell you, if anything happens to my senior sister, I will immediately self-destruct. I'll make you lose everything." Huang Qingliu. His expression changed slightly as he clenched his fists tightly. Xie Fenglu glared at him fiercely and quietly held his breath. This was the only way he could threaten him. Huang Qingliu's gaze suddenly turned to look behind him, a trace of surprise flashing across her eyes as she slowly said, "There's no need to save him." Xie Fengliu's heart sank. He thought that something bad had happened to his senior sister. He turned around in fear and his eyes widened. Ji Shenyu, who had been sucked into the whirlpool, was actually spinning in the opposite direction, and was about to break free from the huge whirlpool. "Senior sister." Xie Fenglu held his breath, his eyes shining. Senior sister was actually able to break free from this kind of whirlpool by herself. She was indeed the strongest. Just as Ji Xinyue was about to rush out of the whirlpool, she let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had learned how to escape from the whirlpool from the mysterious person. Otherwise, she would have lost her life in this deep sea. She pursed her lips and secretly made a hand seal. Once she was out of danger, she would immediately deal with Huang Qingliu. This time, he was definitely behind this. Chapter 2966. She had to save her junior brother first. The tearing force of the whirlpool was getting weaker and weaker. Just as she was about to take advantage of the situation to jump out, her sleeves suddenly moved. With a swoosh, a white light escaped from her sleeves and flew towards the whirlpool. Moon God Sword. She didn't expect it to slip out at this time. Ji Xinyu didn't catch it, and watched it fall into the whirlpool. After a few rounds it disappeared. Ji Xinyu. Wasn't this a divine sword? Wasn't it a divine sword with many extraordinary abilities? How could a whirlpool suck it away? With its ability, it should be able to escape by itself, right? Ji Xinyu only thought of it for a moment. She still had more important things to think about. The moment she escaped, she directly pounced towards Huang Qingliu. Let him go. Although she didn't know what Huang Qingliu's goal was, he frequently restrained Xie Fenglu and made things difficult for her. This proved that he didn't have good intentions. Her junior brother couldn't be threatened by others. Ji Xinyu's water was not bad. This pounce was the essence of all her martial arts. The azure saber in her hand emitted a dazzling light and slashed towards Huang Qinglu. Huang Qinglu didn't expect her to attack so quickly. He dragged Xie Fenglu and retreated like a whirlwind, avoiding her killing move. What is the meaning of this, Princess Xinyu? Ji Xinyu sneered. Stop pretending to be innocent. Her figure flashed and she pounced again. Huang Qinglu dragged Xie Fenglu and dodged several of her killing moves. Once Ji Xinyu attacked, she was absolutely ruthless and without hesitation. Moreover, being in the water didn't affect her performance at all. After all, Huang Qinglu was dragging someone, and this person was very uncooperative, so he was forced into a corner. After a dozen or so moves, half of his sleeve was cut off by the large saber in her hand. If he didn't dodge quickly, half of his arm would have been cut off by her. Such a delicate-looking girl actually attacked so fiercely. Huang Qinglu was forced to retreat continuously. In the end, he had no choice but to push Xie Fenglu in her direction. Forget it, I'll give him to you. Ji Xinyu was about to swing her saber at him, but when she saw this, she hurriedly retracted her saber and followed up with Xie Fenglu. Huang Qinglu's push was a little heavy, and the force of Xie Fenglu's charge was not small. Although Ji Xinyu caught him, she was still pushed back a few steps and almost fell into the vortex again. Xie Fenglu's face was extremely pale, trapped in the thin blue shell. His limbs seemed to have frozen. Ji Xinyu secretly gritted her teeth. Her junior brother was indeed trapped. To think that she had thought that they were just a couple quarreling. She raised her hand and broke the shell for him. Then, she unsealed his sealed acupoints and pulled him behind her. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Huang Qinglu, who was floating in front of her. Who are you? What is the purpose of tricking us here? Huang Qinglu rubbed her chin and looked at her. I don't understand what you're saying. You're clearly here to pick pearls, aren't you? We just met by chance. Ji Xinyu sneered. You were the one who told little Nine about the moonlight clams here, right? You knew that he was worried about preparing a new gift. So when you talked to him, you seemed to have accidentally told him about it. You knew that he would be interested. So you rushed over in advance to wait for us, didn't you? Huang Qinglu smiled. You're really smart. Chapter 2967. Huang Qinglu smiled. You are indeed smart. This sentence indirectly acknowledged Ji Xinyu's words. Ji Xinyu clenched the saber in her hand. Purpose. Huang Qinglu lowered his eyes slightly, and when he raised them again, there seemed to be a light flickering in the depths of his eyes as he looked behind Ji Xinyu. Him. Xiejuk. Ji Xinyu was startled, her eyebrows raised. What? Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly felt a chill on her back and a sharp pain. Her body stiffened as she looked down at the tip of the saber sticking out of her chest. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She turned her head with difficulty and looked at Xie Fenglu, who had stabbed her. You, why? Xie Fenglu's face was pale, but his eyes were as deep as a whirlpool. He did not answer Ji Xinyu's question, but directly gave her a palm. Ji Xinyu involuntarily rushed forward, and in front of her, Huang Qinglu held a blue snake-shaped sword in his hand. The tip of the sword pointed directly at Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu's charge was towards the tip of his sword, as if she was sending herself to be killed. Huang Qinglu smiled at Ji Xinyu, waiting for her fatal collision. After all, Ji Xinyu had grown up in the wind and waves. Although she was shocked by Xie Fenglu's sneak attack, it had become a conditioned reflex to save herself from danger. Before her brain could react, her hands and feet had already taken action. The azure saber in her hand suddenly appeared, and the tip of the saber stabbed towards Huang Qinglu. Her saber was long, his sword was short. If he did not dodge, she would be the one to stab him first. She still profited. Huang Qinglu did not expect her to use such a suicidal attack when she was in a panic, but this kind of attack was the most effective. He could only dodge, then waved his hand, and an undercurrent suddenly rose in front of him. That undercurrent turned into a torrential waterfall in the blink of an eye, like an angry water dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws towards Ji Xinyu. After all, Ji Xinyu was seriously injured, and the pain of raising her hand just now almost made her faint. Seeing the huge torrent rushing towards her, She only had time to set up a small barrier around her, and her whole body was sucked into the torrent. This stream of water was extremely strange. It actually froze into ice in an instant. Ji Shunyue was sealed in this ice, falling towards the whirlpool that was still spinning. In her daze, she seemed to see Xie Fenglu rushing towards her with a pale face. However, before he could reach her, he was stopped by Huang Qinglu. Then, the ice coffin that was binding her was sucked into the whirlpool. All she could see was a deep blue, and she could no longer see anything else. Xie Fenglu watched helplessly as the ice coffin wrapped around Ji Shunyue and sank into the whirlpool. Her body was still bleeding, and the ice coffin that trapped her was dyed scarlet. With her eyes wide open, she disappeared before his eyes just like that. Like a madman, he sent a palm strike towards Huang Qinglu. "Bastard, you killed her! You killed her!" Huang Qinglu took a step back and quickly clamped down on his hand. That pair of eyes that always had a smile in them were now filled with ridicule. "Young master, it was you who did it. It was you who used evil arts to control me." Xie Fenglu was so angry that not only was his body trembling, even his voice was trembling. Huang Qinglu looked at him with a smile, and the words he said were incomparably cruel. In her eyes, it was you who plotted against her and stabbed her with a sword. Xie Fenglu looked at the shiny dagger in his hand. The dagger was still stained with her blood, and even his fingers were stained with her blood. Chapter 2968. He suddenly raised his left hand and chopped at his right hand that was holding the sword. Huang Qingluo's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He quickly restrained him and sealed his acupuncture points so that he could no longer harm himself. Even if you cut yourself into pieces, it's already done. It's useless. Huang Qingluo's voice was indifferent and cold. Xie Fengluo's entire body was trembling. He closed his eyes and suddenly sneered. "I'll go accompany her. If you have the ability, seal my acupuncture points for the rest of my life. Otherwise, as long as I release it, I'll go accompany her." It was easy to stop a person from committing suicide, but difficult to stop a person from committing suicide for the rest of their life. If a person had the intention to commit suicide, they would find an opportunity sooner or later. Since he had killed his senior sister, then he would pay with his life for her. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. There was no need to hesitate. Huang Qinglu looked at him for a moment, as if to confirm the truth of his words. Xie Fengluo's eyes were bloodshot as he coldly looked at him, his thin lips tightly pursed. Huang Qinglu finally sighed. "I won't seal your acupuncture points for the rest of your life. I'll release it for you now, but before I release it, I have to tell you something. Ji Shunyue is not dead. If you die, then she will truly die." After saying this, he really did release Xie Fengluo's acupuncture points. He knew that with this sentence, Xie Fenglu would definitely not commit suicide again. Xie Fenglu really did not commit suicide. He stared at him. "I don't believe it." Although he had been controlled to attack just now, he still had his own consciousness. He knew that although his sword did not pierce through her heart, it still pierced an important organ. She was also sealed in the ice coffin, and could not stop the bleeding, so she would definitely die. Huang Qinglu only said this to dispel his thoughts of suicide. Huang Qinglu did not argue with him. He raised his hand and the seawater in front of him condensed into a water mirror, and a scene appeared in the water mirror. At the bottom of the sea that looked like blue crystals, there was a similarly blue ice coffin stuck in those crystals. Inside the ice coffin, Ji Shunyue's eyes were slightly closed and she was motionless. Her wounds were no longer bleeding. She's dead. She's clearly dead. Even her wounds are not bleeding. Xie Fengluo's fingertips were trembling. No, she's not dead. The reason why her wounds are no longer bleeding is because I used the ice seal technique to seal her wounds. Huang Qingluo's voice was methodical. She can live for another 10 days. If she can't be saved after 10 days, she will be completely dead, and her soul will be scattered. If you want to save her, there is only one way. Awakening. After the awakening, your power will be completely restored. At that time, Saving her will be as easy as blowing off dust. Xie Fenglu was speechless. There are only two paths in front of you. You can either awaken and save her, or you can accompany her when she dies. Which one do you choose? Huang Qinglu looked at him with a smile, giving him a cruel choice. Xie Fenglu closed his eyes. After a while he opened his eyes. His gaze was cold. I choose to awaken. What should we do? Huang Qinglu seemed to be relieved of a heavy burden. Very good, come with me. Xie Fenglu didn't move. Are you sure there's still time? Huang Qinglu naturally understood what he was referring to. He nodded slightly. If you move quickly, there's still time. Xie Fenglu closed his eyes. His voice was as cold as ice. After I awaken, if I can't save her in time, Huang Qinglu, I'll make you beg for death. You'll suffer forever. Huang Qinglu froze. He looked at him for a while and finally sighed. All right. Chapter 2969. He raised his sleeve. An array of blue light shot toward the bottom of the sea. What are you doing? Xie Fenglu looked at him coldly. I'm giving her another layer of protection. Huang Qinglu smiled, but her smile was a little thin. A complicated emotion flashed through her eyes. Actually, I cherish my life too. She dragged him away. Xie Fenglu realized that they were going in the wrong direction. Where are we going? Shouldn't we go out to sea immediately? Huang Qinglu didn't even turn her head. We're going to pick pearls. Isn't that what you've always wanted? I don't want that. I just want to save my senior sister now. Xie Fenglu was full of anger. If this bastard hadn't coaxed him with the moonlight clam's pearl, he and his senior sister wouldn't have ended up in this situation. Huang Qinglu only said, there's still time. She continued to swim forward quickly with him. Xie Fenglu was speechless. The dark bottom of the sea, the deep blue sea. At a glance, it was a stretch of deep blue. In the depths of the sea, a young girl covered in blood was crawling with difficulty. Blood meandered all the way. Her black hair covered her face, making it impossible to see her face clearly. However, her figure was unusually familiar. Jiyu, with a splash, the young girl slowly raised her head. Her black hair parted to the side, revealing a palm-sized face. Her pale and bloodless face hit his heart at this moment. Xinyu. Rangi Yuishinlin couldn't help but call out. He suddenly opened his eyes. The deep sea and the young girl were nowhere to be seen. The surroundings were silent and dark. He was still sitting on the bed. In the black veil of the night, he could clearly see the simple and elegant furnishings in the room. He was still meditating in the quiet room. What happened just now was just a dream. Rangi Yuishinlin raised his hand and pressed on his rapidly beating heart. In such a cold place, his forehead was sweating, and even his palms were wet. He actually had a nightmare. He was obviously meditating. He had never meditated until he fell asleep, let alone had a nightmare. He looked out of the window. The sky was still dark outside. A few stars hung in the sky, looking a little lonely. His heart was still beating wildly, as if he was still panicking just now. The scene from the dream flashed through his mind, and he tapped the space between his eyebrows with his finger. He actually had such a dream. The girl in the dream looked like Jiyu at first, but when she raised her head, she became Ji Xinyu. He even dreamed that she was in great danger, crawling helplessly at the bottom of the sea. Was he overthinking things recently? Or is it that what you think about during the day, you dream about it at night? Or was it a warning? Was she really in danger? Impossible, right? She had already obtained the divine sword, and should be returning to the Purple Cloud sect at this moment. Why did she go to the bottom of the sea to explore? Or perhaps it was just an unimportant nightmare. Moreover, this dream was so strange that the girl in the dream was actually the fusion of Jiyu and Ji Xinyu. Could it be that he was hoping that they were the same person? He looked out at the sky again. It was said that a dream at this time was a warning. Could it be that Ji Xinyu was really in danger? His heart started to beat rapidly again, as if he was getting more and more panicked. The last scene of the dream surfaced in his mind again. The girl raised her head. Her bloodless red lips slightly opened, as if she was asking for help. Save me. Rangi Yuishinlin couldn't hold it in anymore. He suddenly stood up and strode out of the door. He looked up at the sky with a few stars. He stretched out his palm, and a light blue voice transmission talisman appeared in his palm. He began to try to connect. Chapter 2970. There was no movement from the other side, and there was no intention of picking up. He tried several times, but there was no response from the other party. At this time they were usually in deep sleep. Even if the sound transmission talisman lit up, they might not discover it. This was a very normal thing. Although he comforted himself in his heart, he was still panicking. After thinking for a while, he took out a blood-red sound transmission talisman and tried to pick it up. This sound transmission talisman was specially made by Rong Yuishinlin. There were only 2 of them, and they could only be connected to each other, not to others. This one was in his hands, and the other should be in Ji Xinyue's storage space. He had secretly placed it in her storage space, hidden in a small corner. As long as Ji Xinyue did not turn her storage space upside down, this sound transmission talisman would not be found. He had secretly placed such a sound transmission talisman on her not to spy on her, but because this girl liked to take risks, and did not like to be tied down. She did not even like to ask for help. According to her master, whenever she went out on an adventure, she would turn off all the sound transmission talismans on her, not leaving a single one behind. This often made people worried. Therefore, after Rong Yuishinlin and her adventure in the tunnel, he secretly hid the blood-red sound transmission talisman in her storage space, preparing to use it in an emergency. This blood-red sound transmission talisman had 2 special functions. Once it was used, the sound waves would sound in the other party's mind. No matter what situation the other party was in, they would be able to receive it. Secondly, it had a positioning function. Once it was connected, it could slowly determine the other party's position, allowing him to quickly find her. This special sound transmission talisman was invented by Shen Jiuli. After this emperor invented it, he kept one with him in case of an accident. That day, when the Dizun met with great danger in the land of flames, he connected to this sound transmission talisman and woke him up from his sweet dream. Then, he rushed over to save people like the wind. Rong Yuishinlin liked to concoct rare things, so he naturally copied the Dizun's sound transmission talisman with great interest. This kind of sound transmitting talisman required blood essence to refine. Refining one would consume 100 years of his cultivation, so he could only make 2 copies. Because he couldn't find anyone worthy of giving them to, they had been left to rot in his storage space. It was only when he was with Ji Xinyu that he suddenly had an epiphany and gifted her one. Of course, Rong Yu Tianlan wouldn't use this voice transmission talisman so easily. He didn't want that little girl to think that he was spying on her. After Rong Yuishinlin and Ji Xinyue had interacted with each other for a period of time, they also exchanged ordinary sound transmission talismans. Rong Yuetian had tried to contact her a few times. Not bad, she picked up at that time. She was a generous lady, and treated him the same way she would treat an ordinary friend. Therefore, if it wasn't for some special reason, she wouldn't have ignored his voice transmission. The blood-red voice transmission talisman flashed in his palm. Rong Yuetian was still a little nervous. It was really unwise to expose the existence of the voice-transmitting spell because of a nightmare. If Shen Juli knew about it, he would probably say that his IQ was plummeting. He pursed his lips and stared at the blood-red voice transmission talisman, waiting for it to light up. However, after a long while, the blood-red sound transmission talisman remained the same as when it had first been taken out. It only flashed with a faint light and showed no signs of being connected. Chapter 2971. Rong Yuishinlin's face turned pale. If the other party was just sleeping, or was in the middle of some adventure, she would not pick up the ordinary sound transmitting talisman. However, this kind of blood-red sound transmitting talisman could definitely wake the other party up from their sleep. As long as she had the intention to pick up the call, this sound transmitting talisman would automatically connect. Therefore, there was no reason for it not to connect. unless Ji Xinyue knew about this sound-transmitting talisman in advance, and she needed to focus all her energy on the battle. She could not afford to be distracted for even a moment. Therefore, even if the sound waves of this sound-transmitting talisman directly entered her mind, she would reject it immediately. However, was this possible? With Ji Xinyue's character, she should have quickly picked up the call, and at least figured out the origin of this sound-transmitting talisman. That was not right. Ji Xinyue was very straightforward. If she found out about this sound-transmitting talisman in advance, she would most likely throw it away, or simply pick up the call to see who was behind it. Could it be that she had really thrown it away? Perhaps she was in a coma, or perhaps she was already dead. Rangi Yuishinlan's fingers were already cold. She quickly sensed the location of the sound-transmitting talisman, and vaguely felt a bone-chilling cold. This sound-transmitting talisman was in the extremely cold land of the extreme north. Rangi Yuishinlan thought of that dream again. In the dream, it was as dark as the bottom of the sea with ice crystals. There was only one such sea in the Fanning continent, the Tianjing Sea. Whether she threw away this sound-transmitting talisman or not, it was unusual for it to appear there. Why would she go to such a desolate place for no reason? Could it be that she was going to pick moonlight clam pearls? Rangi Yuishinlan was also an adventurous person. He had been there more than 3,000 years ago, and even picked a moonlight clam pearl. However, he was not interested in anything. After playing with it for a while, he gave it away casually. Because he had been there, he knew how dangerous that place was. That sea was the most unpredictable place in the Fanning continent. It was also the coldest place. There were man-eating sharks and undercurrents in the sea. It was very easy to kill. This girl did not want her life. Rangi Yuishinlan's figure flashed and flew directly into the sky. Because he was too anxious, he naturally did not use the ordinary flight technique. Instead, he directly used the teleportation technique that consumed a lot of telekinesis. The place he had set off from was the southern continent, where the mountains were warm and the water was soft. His destination was the extreme north, which spanned almost the entire Sanskrit continent, spanning tens of thousands of miles. With Rongyue Tianlan's skills and techniques, it took her more than half a day to reach Tianjing Sea. When he finally appeared above the celestial crystal ocean, it was already noon. Unfortunately, he had appeared at a time when the blizzard was raging. Snowflakes the size of plates were swept up by the hurricane and smashed fiercely onto his body. Waves that were several feet high rose from the sea and slammed onto the icebergs, smashing them into pieces. Bone-chilling cold. After Rongyu Tianlan appeared here, she realized that she had made a very serious mistake. Because he had rushed over from the south, he was only wearing a very cool thin robe. In addition, he had consumed a lot of psyche power, so the yang qi in his body was not enough. At this moment, when the cold wind blew and the snowflakes hit him, the chill penetrated his bones and made his hair stand on end. He cursed under his breath and used his psyche power to protect his body. Only then did he not get frozen by the sudden cold air. He quickly looked around and did not see anyone's figure, not even a living thing. He once again sensed the location of the sound-transmitting talisman, then looked at the sea under his feet. His eyebrows twitched. The sound-transmitting talisman was at the bottom of the sea. Chapter 2972. He stood there for a moment, then gritted his teeth, and jumped into the water with a splash. Rangi Yuishinlan felt that if Shinjuli knew about this, he would probably give him the title of #1 idiot in the world. For an illusory nightmare, for a person he couldn't contact at the moment, he had driven tens of thousands of miles, and jumped directly into the ice sea purgatory. And the result of this was that he would most likely find an abandoned sound-transmitting talisman. At this time, it was already more than half a day after the pearl harvesting time. Regardless of whether the pearl harvesting was successful or not, she shouldn't have stayed at the bottom of the sea. If nothing happened to her, the sound-transmitting talisman that he had spent so much effort on was most likely abandoned by her in the deep sea. The seawater here was different from other places. It wouldn't freeze even if it was dozens of degrees below zero. If he didn't make any preparations, As long as he came into contact with the water surface, he would be frozen into a lump of ice. Rongyu Ishinlin didn't want to go down a second time. If the sound-transmitting talisman was simply discarded by the girl, his action of jumping down was simply too stupid. Rongyu Ishinlin often boasted that he was a rare smart person and would never do anything stupid in his life. But this time he did it, and he was quite willing to do it. Fortunately, he could sense the sound-transmitting talisman and could determine its general location. Otherwise, he might not be able to find a peanut-sized sound-transmitting talisman in the vast sea even if he searched here for a year. Rongyu Ishinlin was an excellent swimmer and had a protective layer on his body. Even so, when he swam in the water he still had goosebumps. He cursed under his breath again. This was really not a place for humans, and he quickly swam forward in the water. During this process, he didn't give up and used 2 sound-transmitting talismans to contact Ji Xinyue, but there was still no response. He even felt that the place where the blood-red sound-transmitting talisman was even colder. The coldness penetrated his heart through his senses, causing his heart to tighten. Could it be that something really happened to her in these waters? With her martial arts, it shouldn't be, right? Although it was dangerous here, it shouldn't cause any fatal injuries to her. In such cold seawater, a person could only stay in it for a day at most. More than a day would cause permanent damage. That girl should be aware of this. So the possibility of her being fine at the bottom of the sea was almost zero. Rongyu Ishinlin secretly clenched his fists. He would rather be an idiot and come here in vain, and only get a sound-transmitting talisman, than see her dead body at the bottom of the sea. The sound-transmitting talisman at his waist suddenly. When Rongyu Ishinlin saw it, he was stunned. Could it be that she finally remembered to reply? His hand trembled as he pulled out the voice transmission talisman. Then his heart sank. The Moon Divine Swords was. It's that's his left A's. It ru. It of moon of a moon of the of moon. T. Ones of moon. Teat of S of. With its divine power, it was naturally able to escape the power of the whirlpool and jump back up. But it was a little disappointed. It was such a rare divine sword. Anyone who got their hands on it should have treated it like a treasure. Chapter 2973. It was such a rare divine sword that anyone who got their hands on it would treat it like a treasure. It felt that it had been sucked into the whirlpool, and its master would try to salvage it regardless of the cost. For example, at the moment when it fell into the water, if its master really cared about it, she would try her best to catch it in her hands. But no, master only tried to grab it. But after she failed to catch it, she ignored it. It was as if it was not a sword that was sucked into the whirlpool, but an insignificant piece of iron. If it was her broken sword that fell down, she would definitely try her best to salvage it, right? The moon god sword's self-esteem was hurt again. It was a little upset at the bottom of the sea, so it did not want to go up. So it just lay there. Subconsciously, it wanted to wait and see if its master would come to salvage it. It even cut off the telepathic connection between it and its master. It did not want its master to use a normal summoning spell to summon it. How embarrassing it would be if it returned to its master's side. It would not be in line with its noble style as a divine sword. It waited for almost an hour. The moon god sword calculated that its master should have gotten the moonlight pearl by this time, and should have the time to come and salvage it. However, it waited anxiously for so long, but there was still no sign of its master. Wasn't she taking it too lightly? It even caught so many fish for her. Wait a little longer. She really did not want it anymore. She gave up just like that. She was too quick to burn the bridge after crossing the river. No, she had not crossed the river yet. After all, it had not done what she wanted it to do. The more it waited, the angrier it became. The more it waited, the more uncomfortable it felt. Finally, it could not help but activate the telepathic connection between it and its master. It felt that its master could not find it, so it gave her a chance to find it. However, After the spell was activated, it immediately felt that something was wrong. Master's condition was not right. She was very weak. It even smelled a unique bloody smell that belonged to its master. Master was in danger. Her life was in danger. The moon god sword directly jumped up from the bottom of the sea. While following its master's aura, it quickly flew in that direction. It didn't smell any great danger in this sea, so how could its master be in danger? Who could hurt her? Sure enough, when it wasn't by her side, something would happen to her. Very quickly, the moon god sword saw the enormous coffin-like ice shell at the bottom of the sea, and saw its master who was sealed inside and didn't know whether he was dead or alive. The moment it saw this, the moon god sword was enraged. Master wasn't bitten by a monster. He was stabbed by a dagger. There was a ghastly bloody hole in his chest and back. The moon god sword was the ancestor of all weapons. It stuck to the ice shell, and since for a moment, it could tell that its master's injury was caused by the dagger gifted by the hidden sword manner. It could even tell that the dagger was stabbed from her back. It was clearly a sneak attack. Both of her companions had the same dagger, but the one in Huang Qingliu's hand had a fishy smell. The moon god sword's sense of touch was not ordinary. It quickly smelled that there was no fishy smell in Ji Xinyu's blood through the ice shell. This showed that the one who had plotted against her was someone else, her junior brother. He had been plotted against by the person he trusted the most. The moon god sword was angry for Ji Xinyu. It circled around the ice shell. Chapter 2974. The moon god sword was furious for Ji Xinyu. It circled around the ice shell, and could faintly sense that its master was still alive. However, she was unconscious and should have fallen into a deep coma. This won't do. She would suffocate to death in this ice shell. The moon god sword's body emitted a cold light. It wanted to split the ice shell and save its master. It knew that it had great strength and could easily split a mountain. Therefore, it had to be careful to avoid cutting its master in half. Instead of saving her, it killed her for safety's sake. It stuck the tip of its sword on the ice shell and carefully rubbed against it. The ice shell was as smooth as before. Not even a white mark was left on it. The moon god sword was speechless. Its rubbing just now could even leave a hole in a diamond. How could this thin and brittle ice shell not move at all? The moon god sword increased its strength and rubbed against it again. 6 hours passed, and the moon god sword's blade flashed with light as it pierced down from above. The sharp sword tip pierced the ice shell, producing an ear-piercing sound. However, the ice shell only shook a little, and not even a small crack could be seen on it. In these 6 hours, it had used all kinds of methods, including horizontal slashes, vertical slashes, and stabs. It had already used all its methods and displayed all its power. However, it was still unable to cut open the ice shell at all. The moon god sword was very angry. Its angry light caused the seawater in the area to churn, almost forming a huge whirlpool. During this period of time, a fearless man-eating shark broke in. It was attracted by the smell of blood emitted from the ice shell. It opened its mouth wide, wanting to bite the ice shell and drag out the bloody food inside. The moon god sword had a belly full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. With a flash of its sword, it directly cut the man-eating shark into 2 halves. The blood of the man-eating shark attracted even more ferocious beasts in the sea. At first they came one by one, but later on they came in groups. The moon god sword did not look at the species of these carnivorous beasts. If one came, it would kill one. If 2 came, it would kill a pair. When Rongyu Tianlan arrived, she was shocked by the scene in front of her. In the depths of the ocean, the water had already been dyed blood red. Countless corpses of ferocious beasts were floating in the water. From time to time, a cold sword light would shoot out. Every time it shot out, a ferocious beast would be killed. This entire sea was like a bloody slaughterhouse, which was a ghastly sight. Because the seawater was too bloody, it was impossible to see what was at the bottom. However, Rong Yuishinlin still recognized the sword light of the moon god sword. That swaying white light was like a bolt of lightning that split the red clouds. It was extremely dazzling. His first reaction was that Ji Xinyu had run into trouble underwater, and now she was trapped inside, using her divine sword to fight against these beasts. If the divine sword was here, then Ji Xinyu would definitely be here as well. He heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that they were still fighting. At least it proved that they were still alive. He rushed forward, and was caught off guard by a beam of white light that shot straight at him. It was the light of the divine sword. Had she gone berserk? Xinyu, it's me. Rong Yuetian used the bamboo flute in her hand to block the white light, and transmitted her voice. That beam of white light paused for a moment, then suddenly shrank back. Before Rong Yuishinlin could heave a sigh of relief, he saw the divine sword jump out from the sea of blood. After killing so many ferocious beasts, the sword was actually not stained with a single drop of blood. The shiny tip of the sword could blind people's eyes. It was pointed at Rong Yuishinlin with full vigilance, and a bone-piercing murderous aura rushed towards him. Chapter 2975. Rong Yuishinlin's heart sank. This sword did not look like it was controlled by a human. Where was its owner? Could it be that in the depths of this sea of blood? He focused his vision and looked inside. He vaguely saw a white object, and within that white object, there was a person. The blood was too thick and he could not see clearly, but he subconsciously felt that the person should be Ji Xinyu. His figure flashed, and he was about to pounce over. Buzz! The tip of the divine sword shot in front of him, blocking his way. The sword was full of hostility. Rong Yuishinlin. Did this sword lose its mind? He said in a low voice. Move aside, I am your master's friend. Let me see her. The moon god's sword did not back down. The brilliance on the tip of the sword flashed even more fiercely. It was obvious that it did not like the word friend. Rong Yuishinlin sized up the sword's appearance and looked inside. His voice deepened. She was betrayed by her friend. The moon god's sword paused, and the tip of the sword nodded. That was why friends were the most untrustworthy. The moon god's sword did not dare to believe that its master was only left with one breath. If another bad person came to plot against her, she would really be finished. Furthermore, if the one in front of it was a bad person, it would be even more difficult to deal with. It was not his opponent at all. Rong Yuishinlin's hand was like a lotus flower as he grabbed the hilt of the moon god's sword. Bring me to see her. This grab of his was very skillful, and just happened to restrain the moon god's sword. He took advantage of the momentum to rush forward, and finally reached the ice shell. Her surroundings were dyed red with blood, and she was frozen in that shell. Her face was as white as snow, and even her full lips had lost their color. Her long eyelashes were closed, and her chest was not moving up and down. Only a bloody wound could be seen. Rong Yuishinlin placed his hand on the ice shell. His handsome face was as dark as the cold sea, and a storm seemed to have condensed around him. The moon god sword swore that it had never seen a person with such a cold aura, especially when this kind of aura came from this gentleman, who had always been as gentle as jade and modest as he was. It made the moon god sword, who had always been unruly, tremble. Because the smell of blood in this place was too strong, it would still attract a large number of carnivorous beasts from the sea. The moon god sword kill could not kill them all, and it would only create a vicious cycle. Seeing that there were a few big fishes with white teeth swimming over from afar, the moon god sword was about to jump out again, but was stopped by Rong Yuetian. First, he used several purification talismans in the water, purifying the surrounding blood in the blink of an eye. Even the corpses of the ferocious beasts had been purified to some unknown place. Then he started to play the flute. Yushin's sword didn't think that a person could play a flute in the water, and he couldn't even hear what kind of strange sound he was playing. However, after watching him play for a while, the ferocious beasts that were rushing over suddenly seemed to have lost their target. They circled around nearby before turning around and leaving. The sea regained its previous tranquility, and even the seawater regained its deep blue color. This ascendant immortal was truly formidable. He was actually able to resolve the crisis with just a wave of his hand. The moon god's sword was actually very flustered. Although it was arrogant, it was still a sword that had just been born, and didn't have much experience. It didn't know what to do when faced with Ji Xinyu's situation. It only wanted to get its master out of the ice shell. But it had been in vain. Now that it saw Rong Yuetian like this, it felt that it had finally found a backbone. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.